Welcome to Buddhism Seeds, a place where we slow down together, release the mind, and let ancient Zen stories guide you into a deep and peaceful sleep. In this fast-spinning modern world, each of us carries invisible burdens on our shoulders. Relentless work worries about the future wounds that have not yet healed. The mind keeps spinning like a wheel without end. And then, there are nights when even though your body is exhausted, you still cannot sleep, because inside is still noisy. But here you no longer need to try. You do not need to fight for peace. We will let gentle Zen stories unfold like breezes carrying away the thoughts clinging to your mind. Each story is a drop of stillness seeping into layers of worry, helping you release unnamed burdens and return to yourself, whole, gentle, without needing to be perfect. For the next 3 hours, I will walk with you through the ancient landscapes of Buddhism, where every teaching is not meant to be memorized, but to be felt, not for argument, but for letting go and trusting that the universe always moves quietly, whether you strain or surrender. So take a deep breath, put your phone down, and let your mind settle like a lake without ripples. We will begin this journey with the first story. On a distant mountainside where white clouds often sleep all day on the crowns of old pines, there is a small garden tucked against the rocky slope. It is a strange garden, not because of rare flowers, not because of careful tending. On the contrary, it is almost forgotten. Grass grows sparsely. The soil cracks dry like crow's feet, etched on the face of time. Gray stones pile on one another, cold and unmoving. Each afternoon when the sun leans west, pale golden light spreads across the rocks, catching on dust drifting in the air, making it seem as if time itself has slowed, as though this place no longer belongs to the hurried rhythm of the world. That day, the sky was utterly still. No wind, no birds, no rustling leaves. Only the faint sound of footsteps, an old monk walking slowly steady as the beat of a wooden bell. He walked with care, each step touching the earth with his whole heart, his kind eyes glancing about as if quietly conversing with the silent stones. His old yellow robe swayed lightly with each step, glowing like a ray of sunlight left behind from a summer long gone. Then he stopped. Before him lay a barren patch of land full of gravel and gray stones, a forgotten wasteland within the garden. No sign of life. No grass, no flowers, only cracks winding across the ground like scars of the earth. Villagers called it the mouth of dead stone, a place where nothing could ever live. They said the soil cannot hold water, the stones drain away life. Even if something grows, it withers and dies, so no one ever came near. But the old monk stood there for a long while, gazing into the gray stones, as if hearing something no one else could. His eyes held no judgment, no doubt, only the stillness of a lake without ripples. Slowly, he sat down. His hands trembled with age, but every movement was steady. From his sleeve, he drew out a worn cloth pouch. Inside were a few tiny seeds, pale brown dry, no bigger than a pinhead. They were so light, as if a breath could blow them away. Yet he did not scatter them carelessly on the ground. Instead, he leaned close, placing each seed gently into the smallest cracks between stones, as though entrusting something precious. In silence, almost without breath, his thin fingers covered them with a fine layer of dust, then patted softly as if blessing them. At that moment, a few villagers passed by. They stopped surprised and then burst out laughing. One said, half mocking, "You are so naive," Seeds need fertile soil water care. If you plant them among rocks, they will only dry up and die. Another added, laughing, "There is nothing here but stone. Nothing can survive. You're just wasting your time, old man." The monk did not look up nor reply. For just a moment, the corner of his lips curved like a lotus petal slightly opening, a smile quiet and serene. Then he rose, brushed the dust from his robe, and slowly walked back toward his humble hermitage at the foot of the hill. His steps were like a stream running through moss, unhurried, unwavering, unbroken. Behind him, the laughter faded into the afternoon sun. Time passed. Rains came and went like whispers from the sky. The sun touched the rocky slopes each dawn. Spring winds carried the smell of new earth. Tiny wildflowers began to bloom near the walls. Summer arrived with scorching heat burning the gray stones. No one remembered the tiny seeds dropped among lifeless rocks. Everyone assumed they had long since withered. Until one day, nearly a year later, some villagers wandered back to the old garden, and they froze. Amid the barren patch of earth among the cold gray stones, a small sprout had emerged. Its stem was fragile, yet strangely resilient. Its roots crept deep into cracks, gripping tightly, like threads of determination. On its young branch, tender green leaves glistened in the sun like tiny pieces of jade. They were greener than any plant in the fertile soil below the hill. Green as if they had never known the fear of withering. Green as if the whole garden now breathed from their heart. No one spoke. No one laughed. They only stood stunned, staring at the little tree as if witnessing the impossible become real. Someone whispered, "How can this be?" But no one answered. Only the wind, for the first time in a long while, passed through, rustling the young leaves and carrying a faint sound like a reply from the mountains, distant, gentle, yet certain. Among lifeless stones, a tiny seed had survived, not because of rich soil, not because of abundant water, but because there was once a hand that believed in it. And perhaps that very faith awakened life within it, so one day it rose small yet upright, like a quiet miracle that never needed to announce itself as one. Have you ever witnessed something that seemed impossible, yet silently became real? A small seed dropped among rocks where no life seemed possible still took root, sprouted, and grew into a tree stronger than those raised in fertile earth. At first glance, it feels irrational, but that very impossibility touches a truth we all forget. Hardship is not an end. It is only a test of perseverance. Sometimes life does not offer fertile soil. Life only gives you stone. No open doors, only locked gates. No encouragement, only doubtful eyes. But what makes the difference is not the conditions you have, it is how you use what you have. Most sit among the stones and lament nothing can survive here. But some, instead of complaining quietly, take root. They turn willpower into soil, tears into water, and day by day, little by little, they grow. Perhaps no one sees, no one believes, no one applauds, yet life continues quietly, steadily, without needing to proclaim itself. Buddhist teachings remind us, nothing remains forever in darkness if there is still one bright intention. That intention is the seed within each of us. It does not need perfect conditions, only that you do not abandon it. Because if you hold it, the universe will not abandon you. Science has proven this too. A small seed can sleep for years in arid soil, and still live, waiting only for the right moment to awaken. Just as a weary heart can revive from even the smallest spark of faith, success does not require completeness. It does not require high beginnings, strong foundations, or favorable conditions. The only thing it requires is unwavering perseverance. Those who sprout among rocks do not wait for perfect conditions to begin. They begin with what little they have, even if it is only stone, gravel, or solitude. They do not wait for the world to be gentle before daring to be brave. They are brave, and so the world grows gentler around them. The Buddha once taught willpower is like a small stream. No matter how small, if it flows long enough, it cuts through stone. That saying may sound old, but it is deeply true. Stone does not lose to water because it is weak. It loses because water never gives up. This universe moves in a mysterious way. It does not reward those who rush to win. It quietly supports those who keep walking, even when no one stands beside them. When you feel abandoned, the universe is still watching your smallest effort, like how it sent the first spring rains into dry cracks of stone, like how it placed soft sunlight on the first tender leaves. No one saw that moment, but because of it, the little tree survived. So if you feel exhausted in the cold, barren days, do not force yourself to bloom today. You do not need to shine like someone else's garden. You only need to root a little deeper each day, even if just a little, even if unseen, even if no one believes. Because one day, when people return to the place where they once mocked you, they will see a tree standing there, not competing, not proven, only quietly steadfast, greener than all the trees raised in fertile soil. You do not need to defeat anyone. You only need to not give up on yourself. For the seed among rocks was not born to compete. It was born to remind us, no matter how harsh the adversity, if you still trust and do not give up, you can still live. Green, still bloom, and still rise high. And the greatest miracle is this: once you sprout among rocks, no storm can ever break you again. Have you ever tried to explain everything to the point of losing your inner stillness? Have you ever analyzed every small detail of life only to feel more tangled the more you think, drifting further from peace? Today's story has lived on for more than 2,000 years, and just one smile changed the whole world. That day, the sky was unusually clear. Not a single cloud touched the vast horizon, and the gentle sunlight stretched out like golden silk over each stone step leading into the hall. The air seemed freshly washed, so pure that anyone who breathed it in felt as though they had just sipped cool spring water. From distant places, thousands of monks gathered. Yellow robes spread across the courtyard, sitting in neat rows, solemn yet silent. The sound of footsteps, the rustle of cloth blended with the beat of expectant hearts, making the atmosphere feel like a still morning lake, calm, deep, yet filled with anticipation. Everyone believed that today, the Blessed One would deliver a teaching unlike any other, a teaching that could open the gates of truth and hand them the key to ultimate wisdom. Some carefully brought small scriptures to write down every word. Some closed their eyes, praying they might fully understand. Some sat upright, hands on knees, faces glowing with anticipation. All awaited one thing, the Dharma. Then, the Buddha appeared. He did not arrive like a miracle, but like a cool breeze passing by, simple, yet making everyone bow their heads at once. Each step was slow, steady, like music echoing inside the heart. No one spoke, but in that moment, thousands of hearts beat in unison, the rhythm of waiting. But strangely, he did not speak. He quietly walked to the stone steps. There, in a small, unnoticed corner, a lotus was blooming. It was not large, not radiant, nothing special to those expecting profound teaching. Just a small lotus still holding morning dew, so delicate it seemed a single gust of wind might scatter its petals. The Buddha bent down. He lifted the lotus and turned toward the assembly. He raised the lotus high and smiled. No words, no sound. The hall fell silent. Those nearby almost held their breath. Time itself seemed to pause. Thousands of eyes fixed on the lotus. Thousands of hearts waited for a teaching, but none came. His smile remained gentle, quiet. The lotus trembled under the morning light. The monks began to stir uneasily. They looked at one another, eyes full of questions. Is this all? Where is the truth? Where is the Dharma? Where is what we came for? The silence stretched on. Minds grew restless. Some nearly raised their hands to ask, but stopped. No one dared break the stillness yet. In their heads rang 100 questions. Then across the sea of silence, a quiet laugh arose. Not loud, not mocking, but a clear, pure smile like a ray of sunlight piercing the darkness of confusion. It was Mahakashyapa. Sitting at the edge, calm and serene, when he saw the Buddha lift the lotus, he smiled. For no reason other than instant understanding. That smile needed no words, no logic. It was a meeting mind to mind. The Buddha's eyes met Kashyapa's. Without a single word, all was clear. The Buddha nodded. The entire assembly was shaken. A simple nod, yet it thundered in their hearts. They did not understand. They were shocked. They were confused. Why did thousands not understand, yet one did? Why did all gathered wisdom still wander lost while one smile found truth? No one spoke, but all saw one thing. The Buddha had given something, and Kashyapa had received it. Later generations called this moment holding up a flower smiling. No doctrine, no lecture, no analysis, only a flower, only a smile, but in what seemed like nothing was everything. Later it was said the Buddha declared, I have the treasury of true Dharma, I the wondrous mind of nirvana, now entrusted to Kashyapa. Yet even without those words, the assembly had already witnessed the transmission in silence. For truth is not something to be written in books, not something to be dissected with the intellect. Truth can only be realized in direct resonance, in silent understanding, in a smile answered by a smile. What makes this story so mysterious and compelling is this. Some things, the harder you seek, the further they slip away. Only when the mind is let go, when the heart is open, does the truth already reveal itself. That day, thousands did not see. They expected something lofty, something grand. Only Kashyapa saw, because he let go of expectation, allowing the lotus to enter directly into his heart. Even now, when retold, people still ask if I had been there, what would I have seen? Just a flower, or the whole universe hidden in a single flower. And this is why the story endures a tale of silence that still echoes across millennia. Is it not strange that just a smile without a single word is remembered as the first moment of Zen transmission? Not by chance did that moment enter history, living on in countless generations. Because what the Buddha sought to teach was not in words, it was in the very life blooming within that small lotus. A flower does not try to become a flower. It simply is. It does not explain why it blooms, does not argue whether it is beautiful or not, does not prove its worth. It simply blooms. And in that moment, the entire truth of existence shines forth. Yet modern life has made us forget this simplicity. We grow up in a world that demands explanation, analysis, proof. From school to family to work, everything insists, explain, prove. Hold on to formulas and reasons. We are told that if something cannot be explained, it has no value. But the truth is the opposite. Some things cannot be grasped by reason, only felt by the heart. We have learned to live more as thinking heads than as living hearts. We look at a flower and immediately ask, what species? How long will it live? How much light and water does it need? We forget that before it became an object of study, it was simply a miracle blooming before our eyes. It is like watching a sunset. Do you need to understand the optics of light to feel its beauty? Do you need to explain atmospheric scattering to know the sky glows red? Or can you simply stand still, gaze quietly, and let your heart fill with that light? That is what the Buddha reminded that day. Truth does not need to be held stored in the mind. Truth only needs to be lived. You do not need to understand peace to be at peace. Just breathe more slowly, live more deeply. You do not need to analyze each drop to know it is a river. Just place your hand in the water and feel it with your whole body. Truth does not live in books. Truth lives in how we live. Each time we live fully in the present, without judgment, without competition, we have already touched truth. Yet to live this way is not easy. Modern society never lets the mind rest. Every day there is too much to know, to do, to achieve, to prove. People must constantly explain themselves, constantly prove they are good enough, worthy enough. And the more they try to prove their worth, the further they drift from true worth. The more they try to understand life, the more they lose living itself. This world is full of heads that know too much, but hearts that feel too little. People can list hundreds of definitions of happiness, yet not know the peace of sitting quietly one afternoon, listening to the wind through the trees. They know the chemical formula of water, yet forget the cool relief of a sip when thirsty. They debate endlessly about love, yet seldom pause to hold a hand in silence, letting the heart speak. That is why sometimes what we need most is not another explanation, but a quiet moment, simply to exist like that flower, without recognition, without being understood, without needing to fit any standard, just to bloom in this moment. And strangely, when we stop trying to become someone, we return to ourselves. When we analyze less, we feel more. When we stop arguing to win, we begin to listen and truly understand. This may sound against everything society teaches. Society praises reason, dismisses feeling as weakness. But think, have your most beautiful moments come from analysis? When you fell in love, did you explain why? When you cried to a song, did you understand every lyric? Or was it simply that one morning when sunlight slipped through your window and your heart softened for no reason at all? Those moments do not come from logic. They come from life itself, and life can only be felt, not explained. Modern neuroscience confirms something fascinating. The human brain has two systems, one for reason analyzing, calculating, one for intuition, sensing, connecting. When reason dominates, intuition dims, and vice versa. That is why, if you live only by analysis, you lose the ability to feel life fully. So when your mind is too noisy, too tired, too full of reasons, step outside. Find a small piece of nature, a flower by the path, a fallen leaf, a drop of dew on glass. Do not analyze. Do not question. Just look, and let your heart see instead of your eyes. That is when stillness becomes wisdom. It sounds like a paradox, but true wisdom is not knowing much or speaking well. It is the ability to be silent and see clearly, like a still lake reflecting the sky. A restless mind sees only ripples of its own making. And notice truly wise people often speak little. They do not argue to win. They do not rush to refute. They observe, smile, and then speak one gentle sentence that awakens the whole room. Wisdom does not need noise. Wisdom needs stillness. Only in stillness can you hear what life whispers. Only in stillness can you feel the heartbeat of life within you. You do not need to be a sage. Just pause, look at a flower, and smile. That is enough. In that smile, all answers are already there. When the mind is still, you no longer need to explain life. You become life. And when you become life, you no longer fear loss, for nothing can be lost when you are already everything. So, if you are tired of trying to understand too much, if you are lost in endless analysis, if you are losing peace by over-explaining, stop. Gently. Set down the burden of having to understand and simply feel. Be like the flower. Do not argue. Do not compete. Do not insist on being right. Just quietly bloom. For in the stillness of a single flower, you may find yourself again. Have you ever gone through sudden twists in life and rushed to label them bad luck, only to look back years later and realize it was the best thing that ever happened? Today's story is about a farmer who lived through days like that when misfortune and blessing kept changing shape. The whole village kept changing its tune while he simply smiled. Long ago, at the foot of a mountain veiled in clouds year-round, there was a small village. It wasn't wealthy, but people lived kindly and worked hard, tending fields, raising livestock, trading for food and clothing. In that village lived a farmer and his son. They didn't have much. Their home was mud-walled with a thatched roof, and in the stable there was only one horse. But to them, that horse was more than an animal. It was their most precious asset and their main livelihood. Thanks to the horse, father and son could haul produce to market, plow deeper furrows, even trade it for a little money if needed. In the villagers' eyes, it was the finest, strongest, rarest horse around. Then one morning, when dew still blanketed the grasslands, the farmer went to the stable as usual and froze at the sight. The door stood wide open. The ground was scuffed with hoofprints leading out. He followed the tracks up a small slope until they disappeared into the hillside. The horse was gone. News spread like wildfire. Villagers rushed to his house, some pitying, some whispering, some shaking their heads. Everyone said the same thing. "What bad luck, your finest horse has run away." People murmured. They didn't have much to begin with, and now they've lost their most valuable thing. How will they recover? Someone even clicked their tongue. He must have been careless. If it were me, I wouldn't have left the stall unlatched and lost the whole fortune like that. The farmer heard it all. He didn't argue or defend himself. He simply stood there with a gentle smile and said one short sentence that surprised everyone even more. Who knows if this is bad or good? The village erupted. Some sneered, thinking he was hiding his pain behind a brave front. Others shook their heads, calling his words upside down and unreasonable. But he didn't explain further. Quietly, he went back inside and carried on as if nothing had happened. A few days later, when the talk about the missing horse had cooled, an evening came when the sun was just dipping behind the mountain and a cloud of dust rose at the foot of the hill. A familiar figure appeared the horse. It galloped back mane, flying hooves drumming the air. But what shocked the village wasn't just that it returned. It didn't come back alone. Behind it trailed a whole herd of wild horses from the hills. 10, then 20, then 30, one after another, powerful, majestic. No one had ever seen anything like it. The village erupted into chaos. People ran after the herd, astonished and envious. Yesterday they pitied him. Today they crowded in to congratulate him. You're so lucky from losing one horse. Now you have a whole herd. A great blessing has fallen on this house. Voices buzzed, some jealous, some impressed. Everyone thought rare good fortune had come to father and son. But in the midst of the cheering crowd, the farmer was as calm as ever. He smiled and answered with the same words. Who knows if this is good or bad? The village fell silent for a moment, then began to murmur again. Many frowned, thinking him odd. With a whole herd of horses, how could he call it anything but luck? A few days later, when things seemed to settle down, misfortune struck. The farmer's son, young, strong, full of life, tried to ride one of the new horses. Being wild, it wasn't used to people stubborn and fierce. With one sharp buck, it threw him. The crack of breaking bone rang out. The boy lay still, face pale, his leg badly broken. The house sank into pain. News spread. Villagers returned this time to console them. Such bad luck. You gained a whole herd, and now your son's leg is broken. Blessing turned to disaster. Everyone pitied them, some even scolded. It's your fault for keeping wild horses, not protecting your son. The farmer heard everything and kept his quiet smile. He said as always, who knows if this is bad or good? The villagers grew irritated. To them, this was clearly a calamity. A young man with a broken leg, his future darkened. Why would the father still refuse to call it what it was? But the farmer didn't argue. He knew time would answer for him. Sure enough, a few weeks later, war broke out. The court ordered a general conscription. Soldiers marched into the village to take all able-bodied young men. Cries echoed in the alleys, mothers parting with sons, wives clinging to husbands, little siblings holding on to brothers. They knew the road to war might not lead back home. One by one, the village youths were forced to leave their figures swallowed by the dusty road. Only the farmer's son with his broken leg could not wield a sword and was allowed to stay. That day, the village fell silent. They looked at the farmer and his son sitting peacefully on the porch, listening to the wind pass over the thatched roof. And this time, no one dared call it bad luck or good luck. They only remained quiet and began to understand that in this world, misfortune and blessing are inherently uncertain. What we call bad today may turn good tomorrow. What we rush to call good today may become bad the day after. No one knows in advance. No one holds certainty. Only one thing is sure: everything flows in the unseen hands of the universe. The farmer did not need philosophy or debate. He simply lived by a simple faith. Don't judge too quickly. Let time answer. And that was enough to make him the wisest man in the village. This is a story about a horse and also the story of every life. Who can guarantee that what we call good fortune today won't become tomorrow's trial? Who can be sure that what we call loss isn't opening another door? Life is like a river, sometimes calm, sometimes stormy. Instead of rushing to conclusions, learn to pause for a moment, smile and say, who knows if this is bad or good? A single event can change meaning many times. The lost horse was first labeled bad luck, then turned out to be a blessing. The son's broken leg seemed a disaster, yet became the reason he escaped the draft and kept his life. 3 shifts in one story, each one leaving people astonished. That is the deeper message. Fortune and misfortune are unstable, never frozen in the labels we hastily slap on them. In daily life, this shows up constantly. What seems tragic today may years later reveal itself as grace. What seems lucky today may quietly sow the seeds of future storms. But people rarely have the patience to wait for the whole story to unfold. We are too hasty. When something goes wrong, we instantly sigh. What bad luck. When an opportunity appears before the consequences play out, we cheer. How lucky. We label events as if life were a report card to be graded on the spot. But the truth is, no one can judge a story while it is still unfolding. We see only a slice while life is a much bigger picture. One sad frame doesn't mean the whole painting is sad. One dark frame may be just the night before dawn. Look again. Today's bad may be the very thing that leads to tomorrow's good. Conversely, today's good may be quietly planting the seed of a great lesson arriving in the form of challenge. In reality, people often realize this only after passing through upheaval. Some once sobbed over losing a job, yet that very event pushed them onto a new path, the one they later knew they were born to walk. Some believed a broken marriage was the end, but years later, with a calmer heart, they saw it was the beginning of their gentlest freedom and deepest peace. When you meet them again and hear them say, if that collapse hadn't happened, I would never be who I am today, it becomes clear. But in the eye of the storm, few can see it. Standing in the center of chaos, we see only loss, pain, confusion. The farmer's difference lies exactly there. He did not try to force meaning right away. He simply refused to conclude too soon. His calm did not come from intellectual talk, but from not being hasty, not labeling quickly. That is the most important thing to learn from him. Do not rush to judge what is happening. None of us can see the entire story the universe is writing. Life is like a long book. Each upheaval is just a chapter. A sad chapter does not make the whole book sad. A dark chapter does not mean there is no light ahead. Often that very dark chapter is the bridge into the brightest part. So whenever something unwelcome happens, instead of asking, why is this bad thing happening to me? Try changing the question. Could this be the first step toward something better? That question does not need an immediate answer. Just keep it open and let time respond. Time is fairer than our momentary emotions. Feelings are impulsive. Time is quiet and patient, returning everything to its true meaning. The deepest lesson the farmer teaches is this: let the universe arrange things, and then look back with a smile. We do not need to control everything. In fact, we cannot. No one controls who comes or goes, who loves or leaves. No one controls the weather, the market's war disease, or the passing thoughts in someone else's mind. The only thing we can do is plant good seeds, live kindly, give our best to what is ours to do, and release the rest to the universe. The universe has a wondrous way of setting every piece in its place, as long as we do not shatter the pattern with our haste, impatience, and small ego. We don't need to understand everything, nor win everything. We only need to be still enough not to conclude too soon, generous enough to smile even when it isn't yet clear whether this is misfortune or blessing, because who knows what frightens you today may be what saves you tomorrow. Modern science offers a simple confirmation. In psychology, there's a concept called reframing. The event stays the same, but the meaning we assign to it changes, and so do our emotions. A failure can be seen as a dead-end fall or as a lesson for growth. What determines it is not the event itself, but the frame. The farmer embodies reframing. In the most natural way, he did not frame things too early. He left them open, letting time paint the meaning. Therefore, if you are in a dark stretch right now, do not rush to call it misfortune. And if you are standing in bright light, do not assume you will never stumble. Live gently day by day. Give your whole heart to what you can do and release the rest to the universe. One day when you look back, you will see that every turn, every upheaval, every bend in the road was a perfect move. And perhaps you will smile like the farmer long ago at fortune and misfortune, uncertain yet full of wonder. Long ago, on a high mountain shrouded in clouds year-round, there was a small hermitage nestled against a rocky slope. There lived an old Zen master in pure quiet. Each morning, as the sun first peeked over the distant ridge, he would sit on the large stone before the hut, back straight, eyes half closed, breath slow. His whole being was as calm as an ancient pine. From afar, one might feel he was no longer a person sitting there, but part of the mountain forest itself, quiet, enduring, unmoving amid the flow of time. One early morning, while mist still wrapped the hillsides, a young novice arrived to begin training. He had been born into a noisy family, raised among arguments, scrambling, and constant turmoil. In his heart for years, there had never been a single peaceful day. Even after being sent to this mountain forest, where everything was utterly still, his mind was like a swirling river, full of ceaseless ripples. That morning, he sat at a distance watching his teacher. Before him, the old master sat as still as a stone statue, face, gentle breath, unhurried eyes closed, yet bright as if reflecting the whole earth and sky. The sight filled the novice with both admiration and sadness. The more he looked at his teacher's stillness, the more he felt how tangled his own mind was. He sighed softly. In the silence, the sound was clear like a small ripple on a lake. After a moment's hesitation, he came closer, bowed, and spoke quietly. "Master, my mind will not be still." His voice trembled. He sat down, fingers interlaced, eyes reddened from sleepless nights. "Feelings come and go, changing like the wind. They keep dragging me along and I am exhausted. How can I be at peace like you?" The question was so sincere, it seemed even the grass and trees paused to listen. The master did not answer at once. He remained seated, breathing steady, like waves washing a distant shore. Time moved slowly. Only birdsong in the branches, and the murmur of a stream somewhere among the rocks could be heard. The novice's heart grew heavier. Did the teacher not wish to answer, or did he think the question was too naive? Suddenly the master lifted his face. His eyes were bright yet calm, like two deep lakes. Without a word, he simply looked upward. The novice was surprised. Slowly, he followed his teacher's gaze. In the sky, white clouds drifted lazily. Some gathered into the shape of mountains, some stretched like silk, some appeared and instantly dissolved. They changed constantly, sometimes thick like cotton, sometimes thin as smoke, sometimes covering the whole sky, sometimes parting to reveal a deep blue. Then, one by one, they merged and vanished without a trace. The sky itself remained unmoving, silent, boundless. The master smiled. His voice rose low and gentle, like water running through stones. "Do you see? The clouds come and go, but the sky remains still." The novice furrowed his brow, puzzled. Curiosity and confusion stirred within him. He answered softly, "I don't understand." The master turned to him. His eyes were kind, soft as the first sunlight passing through leaves. He spoke slowly. "Your emotions are the same. They are only clouds. You are not the clouds. You are the sky." Those words were light as a breeze, yet they touched the novice's heart deeply. He sat in silence for a long while, eyes lifted to the moving clouds. They truly came and went. None remained. And yet the sky stayed vast and unchanged, unaffected by the appearance or disappearance of any cloud. In that moment he realized all this time he had mistaken himself for those clouds. When angry, he believed he was the anger. When sad, he believed he was the sadness. When anxious, he believed he was the anxiety. So when emotions arrived, he became them. When they left, he lost direction. He had forgotten that beneath all that movement, there was a wide, unchanging space always present the sky within. He sat still, tears falling without his noticing, not from sadness, but because a small ray of light had just appeared inside, faint yet clear and warm. The master watched him, still smiling. He offered no further philosophy. Sometimes a single image is worth more than 1,000 teachings. From that day on, whenever emotions surged, anxiety, anger, or fear, the novice remembered the sky. He knew clouds could be thick and block the light, but they could not stay forever. Clouds would pass. The sky would remain vast and unharmed. This story was later passed down as a testament to the power of stillness. In life, everyone has emotional clouds, fleeting happiness, sudden sadness, vague anxiety. But if we know we are not the clouds, we are the sky, we learn to loosen, to release, and to live more peacefully. The sky does not fight the clouds nor hurry them away. It simply remains. And that very presence is the sign of true freedom. There is a truth many do not see. Most of us live as if we are the clouds when our true nature is the vast sky. When sadness comes, we hurry to conclude, "I am a sad person." When anger flares, we label ourselves, "I am hot-tempered." When anxiety rises, we believe, "I am weak." All those conclusions are mistaken. No one is sadness. No one is born to be anger or anxiety. We are simply experiencing those states. They are passing clouds, endlessly changing shape. They cannot define the sky, just as emotions cannot define a person. Many people mistake this so deeply they torment themselves. When angry, they believe they are inherently bad. In despair, they think life is meaningless. In loneliness, they think they are a burden to others. But emotions, are only guests who visit arriving and leaving. No guest stays forever. If we learn to observe instead of identifying with them, we will see them pass as naturally as clouds drifting across the sky. Imagine an afternoon lying on the grass, gazing up. White clouds drift by, gray clouds gather, then all disappear. We don't need to keep them nor drive them away. All we do is watch and let them pass. The human mind is the same. When emotions sweep in thick as clouds covering the sky, we often react by resisting, suppressing, or trying to push them out. But the more we fight, the stronger they become. The more we press them down, the more they rise. If we simply sit quietly, breathe slowly, and observe, we discover a simple law: no cloud lasts forever. Sadness passes, anger dissolves, worry moves on, and the inner sky remains whole. This is not a pep talk. It is the truth. Emotions are passing streams of energy, arising and ceasing, not fixed. They are like small ripples on a lake. The lake is still the lake, even when waves appear. A person is still themselves, even on a day of anger, anxiety, or sorrow. When this is understood, the fear of emotions fades. We don't need to force sadness away, push anger out, or suppress anxiety. We know they come only to go, not to stay. Why then do we suffer so much because of emotions? Because we cling to the clouds. When a dark cloud comes, we panic, believing the sky will be dark forever. When a pink cloud drifts by, we try to hold it, believing that if we lose it, happiness will vanish. We forget a truth: only by not clinging to clouds can we see the sky. Consider a thought-provoking story. A woman once went through a broken marriage. After the divorce, she cried every day, convinced her life was ruined, that the future would be nothing but gray. She sought a teacher and asked, "How do I stop being sad? How do I drive away this dark cloud?" The teacher answered, "Don't try to drive the dark cloud away. Let it pass, but when it passes, don't forget to look up. The sky is still there." Years later, she returned. No more tears, only a peaceful smile. She said, "The sky had never left. Back then I stared at the clouds so long I forgot the sky was still there." What causes suffering is not the emotions themselves, but the mistake of believing we are the emotions. When we cling less to the clouds, something wondrous appears. The mind begins to settle. And when the mind is steady amid change, a deep kind of freedom arises. That freedom is not the body going wherever it wants or doing whatever it wants. It is the freedom of the soul. It doesn't mean there is no sadness or fear. Freedom is when sadness comes and we do not run. When fear comes and we are not paralyzed. When anger comes and we are not swept away. Freedom is when in the storm of emotion we can still sit, breathe slowly and quietly. Say, "I am not this storm. I am the sky behind it." We cannot stop clouds from forming, nor choose a life of only sunny days. But we can choose not to let clouds cover the entire sky of the heart. We cannot avoid emotions, but we can choose not to let them define us. Because no one was born to be a cloud. Each person was born to be the sky. So when the mind is stormy, sit down, breathe slowly, and whisper, "These are only clouds. They will pass." Then look a little deeper and tell yourself, "The sky within me remains intact." Modern science also shows that emotions have very short lifespans. Neuroscience finds that if they are not fed by repeated thoughts, a strong emotion lasts in the body for about 90 seconds. Yet we suffer much longer, not because the emotion stays, but because the mind keeps retelling the story. reviving it again and again. In other words, clinging keeps the clouds in place, not the sky. Seeing this, we feel lighter. Today's sadness, however thick, will pass. Today's worry, however heavy, will drift away. Today's anger, however fierce, will fade. And when they pass, the inner sky remains quiet and vast. Just remember, you will never lose yourself, no matter how many times the clouds gather in your life. The sky has never left, and you have never ceased to be the sky. Have you ever watched something leave your life? A person, a relationship, a season, a dream, and felt your heart shatter? You clung to it, begged it not to go, and still had to watch it drift away. If you've ever felt that way, today's story is for you. Long ago, behind a small Zen temple tucked into a mountainside, there was a quiet, ancient garden. In that garden, at the center of a moss-stained brick courtyard, stood an old Bodhi tree. People said it had been there for hundreds of years, planted by the very founders of the temple. Generations came and went, elder monks passed away, new novices arrived, and the Bodhi tree remained silently witnessing it all. Its trunk was so large that 3 people couldn't wrap their arms around it. The bark was rough and cracked, like deep wrinkles carved by time. Its lush branches spread wide, shading a broad stretch of the courtyard. In summer, birds gathered to sing among the branches. At noon, the swaying leaves hung like green curtains, creating a cool, peaceful refuge. But the most beautiful sight came in autumn. As the sun softened and the air grew crisp, the Bodhi leaves began to change. Green turned to gold to brown, then quivered before letting go. Each leaf fell in a slow, pure spiral like a gentle dance in the air before resting on the mossy bricks. The courtyard seemed to glow with a carpet woven by earth and sky wistful yet solemn. One autumn afternoon, as the leaves began to fall in greater number, a young novice who had just entered the temple stood beneath the Bodhi tree. He looked up, eyes shining, as they reflected each leaf letting go. A tender, hard-to-name sadness rose in his chest, the childhood sorrow of witnessing parting, of seeing something once dear slip away. He whispered regret in his voice. They're falling, like they're dying. At that moment, the old Zen master approached from afar, slow steps light as wind eyes, gentle yet deep. He stopped under the Bodhi tree and gazed upward with the novice. Together, they watched a golden leaf tremble on its branch. A breeze passed, the leaf released, spinning in the air as if slowly finding its way home. The novice sighed, voice tight. "Master." It fell. The master looked at him and smiled kindly. His voice was soft and unhurried, sinking into the heart like water into dry earth. No, it did not fall. It returned. The novice's eyes widened. He didn't understand. In his mind, once a leaf left the branch, it meant loss and ending. How can that be called returning? The master silently bent down, picked up a freshly fallen leaf, and placed it on his palm. The last light of day shone through, revealing tiny veins like threads of life. He turned the leaf gently and said, "Look." Before leaving the branch, the leaf lived fully. It received sun and rain, nourished the tree, cooled the garden, gave shade to many. And now, as it lets itself down, it does not disappear. It returns to our earth. It breaks down, feeds the soil. The soil feeds the tree, and the tree grows new leaves. Nothing is lost. Everything returns. The master's words rang in the novice's heart like a bell. He looked up again at the leaves spinning in the wind, and they no longer seemed sad. Instead of loss, each one looked as if it were going home. The master continued, "Human life is the same. When someone leaves us, we grieve and call it loss. But in truth, they are returning to the great circle of life. There is no birth, no death, only going and returning, only transformation." The novice fell quiet, eyes wide, as if catching a glimpse of something very deep. The breeze carried the rustle of leaves, a wordless accompaniment to the lesson. The master set the leaf down on the mossy brick and slowly turned toward the hermitage. His shadow stretched across the courtyard, merging with the evening light, leaving the novice with an impression that would never fade. From that day on, whenever he saw leaves fall, the novice no longer sighed. He smiled and whispered, "They're returning." Season after season, year after year, the novice grew and came to understand more deeply the meaning of those two words, returning. And the old Bodhi tree stood on, continuing to tell countless generations the story of life, of falling, and of endless return. There is a truth we often forget. Our pain does not lie in the loss itself, but in our belief that the loss is permanent. When something leaves, we rush to label it overbroken, gone. It is those thoughts that weigh the heart down and trap the soul. But in the natural flow of life, nothing truly disappears. Everything is returning. Think of a Bodhi leaf in autumn. All summer it is green, shading the garden and feeding the tree. Then in time, it turns gold and brown trembles and lets go. Outwardly, it looks like an ending. But look deeper. The leaf is beginning a new journey. It falls, blends into the soil, becomes compost, feeds the tree. And when spring arrives, new leaves unfurl. The leaf is not lost. It is returning to where it belongs. Life is much the same. A relationship ending is not the erasure of love. It may be a return to freedom or preparation for a deeper bond. A job ending doesn't kill a dream. It may return you to a path that truly fits your nature and abilities. A shattered dream is not a period, it can be the space that makes room for a larger dream that is truly yours. Yet standing in the eye of loss, it is hard to see this. The mind resists, the heart clings. We want everything to stay. We refuse change. So we suffer not only because something leaves, but because we fight it. But life is not static. Everything moves, everything changes. Our suffering lies in not yet learning how to let go. Letting go does not mean rejecting love or denying memories. It means accepting that something has completed its role in our life. Like a leaf that lived a full summer. When the moment comes, it departs quietly, without struggle, without regret. Knowing it's leaving is the condition for a new season to begin. In psychology, there is a concept called cognitive reframing. It shows that pain does not come from the event, but from how we view it. When we label a loss as the end, we suffer. When we can see it as a return or a new beginning, we feel lighter. This is no different from the old Buddhist teaching. All phenomena are impermanent. Impermanence is not loss, it is transformation. A woman once fell into deep sorrow after her marriage ended. She clung to memories and cried herself dry, fearing that if she let go, the good would vanish. The more she held on, the more exhausted she became. One day in the garden, she watched a leaf fall spinning in the wind, then settling on the ground. She burst into tears, but this time, not from despair, from understanding. she realized the memories were not lost. They had returned to her heart, becoming part of her, no longer needing to be carried in her hands. From that moment, her healing began. Letting go is the beginning of healing. Only when the hands are free can they receive something new. Only when the heart stops clinging can it become light enough to mend. That is why the Buddha taught that on any spiritual path, learning to let go is the first step. Look to nature. The sun sets each day, not for darkness to rule forever, but to make room for a new dawn. A door closing is not despair. It is the sign that another door is about to open. If we understand this principle, we will no longer fear loss. In mindfulness practice, when sadness comes, we neither suppress it nor cling to it. We breathe deeply, we smile and watch it like a cloud crossing the sky. Sadness comes to go. Joy comes to go. Nothing stays. This truth is not for pessimism, but to teach us calm. The hardest part of life is not losing, it is accepting the loss. But when we accept it, when we can stand in the empty space, take a deep breath, and smile softly, we see that the emptiness is not an ending. It is the space where something new can take root. So if right now you are watching something, leave your life. Remember what the old master said when he saw a leaf let go. It does not fall. It returns. What you are mourning today may become the seed of a new spring. What you think is broken may simply be transforming to bloom in another form, gentler and deeper. Every ending is a beginning. Every loss is a return. And when we truly understand this, we live more lightly, fear less, and can even smile when a leaf lets go of its branch. Have you ever chased perfection to the point of exhaustion? You try to make everything so polished, so flawless, so by the book that you can no longer see the beauty that was already there from the start. If you've ever felt that way, today's story may quiet you for a moment, because it reminds us of something most adults have forgotten. Beauty doesn't lie in perfection. It lies in life as it's unfolding. Long ago, in a small riverside town, there was a young painter famous throughout the region. He stood out not only for his natural talent, but for an almost obsessive meticulousness in every brushstroke. In his paintings, from landscapes to portraits, every detail was carefully tended. Tiny things like a fallen petal light slanting through a window or the wrinkles on an elderly face were rendered with unbelievable finesse. People would whisper, "He paints as if even each speck of dust has a soul." Because of that, no one anywhere could find a flaw in his work. His name spread far and wide, and he was praised as a rising star. But when he received those compliments, he would answer firmly, "Only when everything is perfect can it be called art." That sentence gradually became his life's motto. From then on, an invisible cord began tightening around his soul each day. Because the so-called perfection has no finish line. At first, he only wanted to paint well. Then, he wanted to paint beautifully. Then he wanted to paint so that no one could criticize it. Finally, he wanted to paint so that even he himself could not find a single speck to fix. And so the sweet passion inside him slowly turned into a heavy burden. He began to be afraid of being wrong, afraid of being poor, afraid of not being good enough. That fear followed him like night seeping into his sleep, so that each morning he no longer looked forward to holding a brush. Then one day, he decided he must create the biggest, most beautiful, most magnificent painting of his life. He believed that if he completed it, his name would be etched forever in art history. With that ambition, he threw himself into the work. In the first month, he only sketched the composition. He drew draft after draft, dozens of them, each crossed out for not being precise enough. For weeks, he wandered the art markets choosing colors. This red wasn't deep enough. That blue wasn't bright enough. That yellow wasn't soft enough. He searched rare shops in faraway cities to find the most perfect pigments. When he began painting, he spent entire nights painting, then erasing, then painting again. Some days, over one tiny detail in a corner, he revised it a dozen times until the paper wrinkled and the canvas tore. The more he fixed, the less right it felt. The less right it felt, the less he could stop. Day after day, the painting lay there half-finished, half-chaotic, not completed yet. He lacked the courage to throw it out. It sat like a shadow, a wound, a massive weight pressing on his shoulders. Months rolled into years, and the painting still wasn't done. Every morning, when he looked at it, his heart felt a little emptier. The early excitement, the happiness of color flowing across canvas of the brush, touching the smooth surface, had vanished. In its place were fatigue, anxiety, and a deep fear. If it never becomes perfect, does that mean all my effort is meaningless? He was exhausted. His studio was a cramped space with a window opening onto a narrow street. Morning light poured in, but instead of making the room glow, it only highlighted the mess. Drafts strewn everywhere. Paint splashed across the floor. Piles of unfinished canvases stacked in a corner. And in the middle of the room, his magnificent painting lay there, half light, half dark, half alive, half dead. One day, as he hunched over sweat beading on his brow, eyes anxiously fixed on a tiny edge, the door opened softly. A Zen master stepped in. He didn't knock, and he made no noise. He simply stood silently behind the painter. No words, no cough, not a sound, just looking. The painter didn't notice. He was too engrossed in his battle with the unfinished painting. He no longer painted like an artist, but like a prisoner shackled by his own brush. After a long while, the master quietly stepped forward and picked up a brush lying on the table. He didn't ask, didn't seek permission. He dipped the brush in paint and walked toward the canvas. Just one stroke, very light, very quick. A single brushstroke arced across the empty space in the painting, a stroke that seemed meaningless, out of place, spontaneous. Then he set the brush down, turned, and left, without a single word of explanation. The painter froze. His heart clenched, stunned and angry, months of sweat effort calculation, all disturbed by one meaningless stroke. He trembled, wanting to shout, to scream, and then his eyes rested on the painting. Something strange had happened. That very stroke, which seemed meaningless, made the whole painting harmonious. It was like a note struck at just the right moment, making the whole melody burst open, like a soft breeze lifting a curtain so the light could flood in. He stared. His heart pounded. His breath caught. Then tears poured out. Not because the painting was finished, not because the master had helped him, but because he realized a painful truth. He had forgotten why he began to paint. He no longer painted to express life. He painted to prove perfection. He no longer painted to breathe freely. He painted as if locking himself in a prison of expectations. and that had killed his passion. In that moment, he remembered the first days. As a child, he drew on sand with a dry twig on walls, with charcoal on paper, with any pencil stub he found. He didn't care if the lines were balanced or the colors exact. He drew because it made him happy. He drew because his heart stirred at a flower, a bird, or a ray of sunlight falling on the porch. As he grew up, he let society teach him only perfection has value. And so each painting turned from joy into an exam, a judgment. But the master's brushstroke shattered every chain. It wasn't beautiful in the usual sense, but it was free. It wasn't perfect, but it was alive. And that is what made him cry. He didn't cry from failure. He cried because he realized he had lost his way. He cried because he remembered the pure heart of long ago, the heart that began it all, which he had abandoned while chasing perfection. From that day on, he changed. He still painted, but he no longer feared being wrong. He still revised his work, but he no longer trembled over not being good enough. He began letting colors flow naturally. The brush could shake, could stray, could differ from the original plan. And he no longer saw that as a disaster. He let life breathe in each painting. And strangely, once he stopped forcing perfection, his paintings had more soul. Viewers no longer marveled only at technique, they felt emotion resonance. They said, "Your paintings make us feel more alive, closer to ourselves." The young painter understood art was not born to prove what's called perfection. Art was born to remind people that they are alive. And perhaps that is the greatest brushstroke of all. Have you ever wondered if you've lived like that painter? You start with the blazing flame of passion, but slowly that flame is covered by the smoke of perfectionism. We chase perfection so hard that we forget the reason we began. In work, in love, in parenting, in the journey of being human, many of us fall into that spiral. We begin with an innocent, clear heart, but then become haunted by the words, must be right, must be enough, must be better, must outdo others. The more we chase perfection, the more we lose the soul of what we're doing. Perfection, seeming like a noble destination, in truth does not exist. There is no perfect painting, no perfect person, and certainly no perfect life. Everything has cracks, and it's through those cracks that light slips in. Life doesn't need to be smooth, it needs to be true. Yet we often turn ourselves into victims of perfectionism, believing only when everything is flawless do we deserve love, recognition, and peace. So we live as if always chased by a shadow called not enough. Chasing perfection is like trying to catch a cloud. The more you chase, the less you ever touch it. The mind gets swept up in worry. Inspiration tightens. That painter didn't lose his talent. He lost the innocence of creating. Worry strangled his inspiration and left him depleted. We've been there too. Things that once captivated us, writing, painting, singing, cooking, gardening, teaching, gradually became burdens under the pressure to be good, correct, better. Inspiration cannot breathe in the suffocating air of worry. It needs room to try to air, to play, to be free. When the mind is busy straining for perfection, we choke off our natural flow. Many gifted people get stuck here. They begin a project with shining eyes, and gradually that light goes out because they no longer create for joy, but for praise, to avoid blame, to not fall behind. In the end, they stop creating, not because they're less capable, but because they're too afraid of mistakes to live honestly. Meanwhile, what makes beauty has never been perfection. Beauty lies in aliveness. A beautiful painting doesn't need every detail exactly right. It needs to move the viewer's heart. A great song doesn't need flawless timing. It needs to make someone cry or smile. A meaningful life doesn't need to be smooth. It needs to be real. The Zen master in the story didn't add any complex detail to the painting. He made one very light stroke, then left, because he understood that sometimes nothing more is needed. Stopping lets us see the beauty that was already there. Likewise in life, when we're too busy fixing, too eager to make things better, we forget to savor what already is. We worry our children aren't gifted enough and forget to hug them while they're small. We worry we're not successful enough and forget the warmth of a family meal. We worry we're not good enough and forget that right now we're breathing, we're alive, and that itself is a miracle. The happiest moments in life are often not when we're perfect, but when we forget we have to be perfect. An unexpected hug, a clumsy meal full of laughter, an offbeat song sung with someone we love, a messy drawing made with a whole heart. None of these are perfect, yet they are achingly beautiful, because they are real. If you are exhausted, stuck in an unfinished painting of your own life, tinkering and retinkering only to lose your way, try setting the brush down. Step back. Look again with gentler eyes. It may be that what you're seeking isn't in the next stroke, but already in what you've done. You've just been too busy worrying to see it. You don't need to be perfect to be worthy. You only need to be present, alive, and genuine. Life doesn't demand that you be error-free. It asks you to dare to live, to love, to try to fail, and to smile at your own awkward strokes. Mistakes aren't enemies. They're signs that you're moving, living true to yourself. In modern psychology, the extreme perfectionist pattern is called perfectionism, a state in which people set impossible standards and then torment themselves when they fall short. Research shows that the more perfectionistic people are, the more prone they are to depression, anxiety, and burnout. By contrast, those who accept good enough rather than perfect are happier and more creative. This is no different from the old saying, "Too much worrying kills inspiration." Likewise, life truly blossoms when we dare to pause. When we stop straining to be perfect, we begin to see the beauty already around us. The Zen master needed only a gentle stroke because he knew when the mind is too busy fixing, the eyes can no longer see the beauty present. So it is with life. Remember, a piece of music that ends at the right moment can move listeners more than one that goes on and on. A painting with open space can be lovelier than one filled edge to edge, and a life that pauses to savor, to breathe, to smile, that is a life worth living. So if your mind is stretched tight like a string, remember the painter's story. When he stopped straining for perfection, when he allowed himself to pause, that was when the painting truly came alive. And perhaps your life is like that painting. It doesn't have to be perfect to be beautiful. It only has to be alive. Have you ever tried to control everything just to feel at peace, only to find the harder you try, the more chaotic your mind becomes? You tidy your schedule, tidy your home, even tidy your social media, yet your head is still as noisy as a bustling market. Today's story takes place in a small hermitage deep in the forest where a stream has been running without pause for hundreds of years, and where a young novice learned the greatest lesson of his life, not by theory, but by 3 silent nights of listening. Long ago, halfway up the northern mountainside, there was a dense old forest. It was so thick that when you stepped inside, sunlight could only slip through a few small gaps in the leaves falling, as delicate threads onto ground covered with decaying foliage. In the deepest part of that forest stood a small thatched hermitage, simple and quiet. The hut was just big enough for 2 people to sit. The earth walls were dark, and the damp scent of soil mixed with a faint hint of incense in the air. The roof was thatched with dry straw. When the wind blew, it rustled like the forest whispering. Around the hut were stone steps covered in green moss, wet and slippery, leading down a small path that curved to the back. Behind the hermitage ran a small stream, crystal clear, as it wound between glossy black rocks. The stream never stopped in spring, as in winter, in storms as in drought, its gentle murmur never ceased. People in the area often said to one another, even if the world changes, even if human hearts are unsettled, the stream behind the hermitage keeps flowing, never once stopping. In the hut lived an old Zen master and a young novice who had just entered the temple. The boy was smart and quick learning, faster than anyone. He memorized verses and temple rules with ease. But there was one problem: his mind was never still. Even after leaving the noisy city and coming to train in the deep forest, he carried within him an underground flood. In his head, thoughts surged one after another, worry upon worry. Every night he tossed and turned. When he sat in meditation instead of stillness, his breath grew short and his heart pounded as if racing against itself. One night, as moonlight silvered the mossy courtyard, he sat by the wooden table in the hut and began to cry. The sound wasn't loud, just caught in his throat, but enough for the master to hear. The master stepped over, placed a thin but warm hand gently on the boy's shoulder, and asked softly, "Why are you crying?" The novice trembled and answered, voice choked, "Because I can't calm my mind. I've tried counting breaths, tried mindfulness, contemplation, tried chanting. But the more I try, the more chaotic I feel. I don't know what to do anymore." The old master was silent for a long time. His eyes looked out the door where the moonlight glimmered on damp stones. Then he spoke quietly, voice light as the wind. "Tonight don't chant. Don't force yourself to meditate. Just go behind the hut and sit listening to the stream." The boy was surprised. Listen to the stream, that's all. But he obeyed. He put on a dark brown robe and walked to the back. The little stream appeared under that night's moon. The full moon hung over the treetops like a giant silver coin. The water ran so clear it reflected the moon into quivering streaks of light. The sound of water slipping over mossy stones was like an old song, gentle and unrushed. He sat on a rock, hugged his knees, and simply listened. He didn't try to chase thoughts away. He didn't try to force his mind to be still. He just sat there and listened to the stream. The first night, his mind still surged. The stream's sound was vague, drowned out by 1,000 noises in his head. He could hear it for only a few seconds before being pulled back into endless questions. What will happen tomorrow? Can I really practice well? Why is my mind like this? Disappointment crept in, but he sat until the night faded, then quietly returned to the hut. On the second night, he went back again. The same stream, the same black mossy rocks, the same mottled moonlight on the water. But this time, amid the echoes in his head, the stream's sound became a bit clearer. It wasn't louder or different. He was simply less preoccupied with the noise inside to hear what was outside. On the third night, he returned once more. He sat still, watched the moon drift across the water, listened to the trickle through the stones. And then, something strange happened. The stream's sound became crystal clear, so clear that nothing could obscure it. The noise in his head gradually dissolved, leaving only the steady, gentle flow. And as the stream grew clear, his mind settled like a lake, whose ripples cease. He sat there a long time. Tears fell, not from sadness, but from something he had just understood. The stream had never changed, only his mind had. From that day on, each night, he went to sit by the stream. He didn't force himself to be calm nor to drive thoughts away. He just sat and listened. Each time he felt his mind soften, waves of worry ebbed away, leaving a clear quiet. The old master often sat in the hut, silently watching the boy's shadow, etched in silver moonlight, and smiled. He knew the boy had found his own path back to himself. Years later, when someone asked the novice, by then a teacher, "What helped you find stillness?" he answered with a very short sentence that contained an entire journey, because the stream never stopped flowing. Only our mind sometimes listens, sometimes doesn't. There is a truth everyone must realize sooner or later. Peace is not outside. It isn't something we achieve by control accumulation or forcing the world to our will. Peace is a current already within us, merely covered over by the mind's noise. The novice by the stream makes this plain. For 3 nights, the stream never changed. Only his mind changed from turmoil to gradually quiet to clear. That shift shows a truth. Calm doesn't come from ordering the mind to be still, but from the ability to let go and listen. In modern life, people often equate peace with control. They believe that to be happy, they must control work, finances, relationships, even their own emotions and thoughts. A tight plan, a packed schedule, a carefully calculated future seem like the path to safety. Yet the paradox is, the more we try to control, the more chaotic the mind becomes. The more we force it to be calm, the more uneasy it grows. Like a stream, the harder you try to dam it, the more the water backs up, turns muddy, and threatens to burst. Only when we let it flow freely does it become clear again. We've all had days when the world seems to turn its back. Every sound feels loud. Every small task becomes a burden. Then, for no obvious reason, the next day, everything feels lighter, gentler. But in truth, work is the same. People are the same. The scene is the same. The only thing that changed was the mind. When the mind is stormy, everything outside feels heavy. When the mind settles, the world naturally feels easier. Like the novice who couldn't hear the stream the first night, but heard it clearly the next, because the inner noise had lessened. The issue is not the external world. It's how the mind reflects it. Many think their unease comes from the noisy city, the chaos of the marketplace. They leave everything for the mountains, the sea, another country, hoping that a change of place will change the mind. But after a few months, the unease returns like a shadow, because the unpeaceful place isn't the city, the sea, or the mountains, it's inside. If the mind isn't calm, then even in paradise, the noise in your head drowns out life's gentle sounds. We live in an age that makes everyone run. We run after work achievements the best version of ourselves. We run after standards set by others. In this endless race, we burn out. The mind is like an ocean in a storm, waves crashing non-stop, the bottom nowhere in sight. Ironically, peace isn't at the finish line. It doesn't wait for us after we're successful enough or good enough. Peace appears the moment we stop. Modern neuroscience also points out something interesting. The brain has a default mode network that activates when we're doing nothing, when we let the mind relax. That's when the brain processes, reorganizes memories, and restores energy. If we're always rushing and straining, that network doesn't function, leading to mental exhaustion. This aligns with the old teaching: stop to see clearly. Listen to hear deeply. Peace doesn't come from doing it, comes from the pause between our doings. Only when we pause can we hear the streams around us wind through the trees, bird song at dawn, the footsteps of loved ones at home, the rhythm of our own breath rising and falling. These sounds have always been there, like the stream behind the hermitage that never stopped flowing. Our minds were simply too loud to hear. We don't need to do anything grand to have peace. We don't need to search or wait. We just need a moment to sit down, release our urge to control, and listen. What makes us suffer isn't the external world, but our attachment to controlling it. We want to control others to love us forever, want everything to follow our plan, want our emotions to behave. But life doesn't work that way. Everything has its own rhythm, like that stream flowing to no one's command. The tighter we grip, the murkier the water. The more natural we allow it to be, the clearer it becomes. Some people seek peace by eliminating thoughts. They sit and force the mind to be empty. But the mind isn't a machine with an off switch. It's like the sky, sometimes many clouds, sometimes few. Yet the sky remains. Trying to drive clouds away only exhausts us. When we watch them pass and accept their presence without identifying with them, we see the sky was never gone. Similarly, the stream's sound doesn't change. If we sit long enough, the inner noise yields and it appears. Peace, then, isn't in a distant future, nor the final result of a grueling journey. It is present in this very moment if we're brave enough to stop. Stop running. Stop chasing. Stop controlling. Simply sit, breathe slowly, and listen. Then peace opens on its own without being hunted. The world has never stopped being gentle. The stream has never stopped flowing. Peace has never been lost. It's just that our minds have been too loud to notice. And sometimes what's needed isn't a revolution or a grand change, but a few quiet moments, like the novice's 3 nights by the stream. 3 nights were enough to see the world didn't change, only the mind did. And when the mind changes, the world changes with it. Have you ever worried so much that you couldn't see anything clearly anymore? You try to think everything through, calculate everything exactly, control every little thing. But the harder you try, the more your mind turns into a muddy lake. If you've ever felt that way, today's story will feel very close to you because it's the story of a meditation student who nearly went mad, just from trying to scoop up a moon's reflection. At the foot of a mountain covered in pines and cypresses stood a small Zen temple nestled by a deep lake. The lake wasn't boundless, but anyone who had ever stood before its still surface felt as if they were facing the entire sky. The water was crystal clear, gleaming like an ancient mirror that had reflected countless generations. Whenever the wind blew, ripples spread slowly across the surface like the measured breath of time. Locals often said the lake had a soul, because each time you looked into it, you seemed to see not only the sky and clouds, but your own mind. In that temple lived a young monk in training. He was known for being smart and quick memorizing sutras, easily grasping doctrine faster and more deeply than many of his peers. But one thing tormented him. His mind was never still. It was like a wild horse that had never been tamed, always running, always at a gallop, never willing to stand still. By day, while studying the teachings, he worried, am I understanding this correctly? What if I'm wrong? When chanting, he constantly compared in his head, is my voice proper enough as fast as that person? Too slow. When sitting in meditation, he was swept up in another whirlwind. When will I awaken? Am I making progress? What if I can't keep up? The more he tried, the more tangled his mind became, like a clear lake, with a hand endlessly stirring it, turning the water murky. The more he wanted calm, the more chaotic he felt. The more he wanted enlightenment, the greater his unease grew. At night, instead of sleeping soundly, he tossed and turned. Even the sound of insects became vibrations inside his chest. Then, on a full moon night after the temple had fallen asleep, he sat up, his heart as agitated as a gust of wind trapped in a mountain pass. He put on his robe and slipped outside, following the mossy stone path down to the lake. The moon was unusually large that night, a bright white disk as if carved from a giant block of jade hanging high in the sky. Its light fell onto the water and shattered into a glittering silver path. The sight held him still. His anxious heart softened a little. He leaned over and looked closely, seeing the full round moon reflected in the water, shining so brilliantly it took his breath away. Suddenly, a thought flashed through his mind like lightning. If I can scoop up this moonlight, perhaps I can grasp the truth. If I can hold the moon's reflection in my hands, I'll have the answer to everything. The idea rose so powerfully, he couldn't tell how absurd it was. He bent down and cupped water with both hands. Water splashed. The moon's reflection broke into flickering fragments. Panicked, he grabbed again. His hands churned and raked the surface. But the more he tried to scoop, the more ripples he made. The moon was no longer whole. It disappeared. Cold sweat ran down his spine. His heart pounded wildly. Why the moon was here, right here. Why is it gone now? What did I do wrong? He frantically scooped more water hands, trembling, splashing harder. He only muddied the lake further. The reflection vanished, no light, not even his own outline. Only a dark, chaotic surface remained. He sat there in a daze, empty hands dripping. Anxiety and despair swept over him like a storm. Moments ago, the truth had been right before him, almost within reach. And now, it was gone. In his head, a chorus of self-reproach rose. I'm incompetent. I'm foolish. I'll never be good enough to realize the way. Dawn lightened the sky. The eastern horizon blushed. In that quiet, an old figure approached the abbot, thin and unhurried eyes, gentle like an autumn lake. He saw the young monk sitting on the shore, clothes-soaked hair, plastered down hands, muddy. The master didn't ask anything at first. He stood beside him and looked at the lake. The water was still cloudy, the moonlight shattered. After a while, he sat down and spoke softly like the morning breeze. "You cannot scoop the moon out of the water." The monk started and looked up, eyes red. The master met his gaze and continued, "Because the moon has never been in the water. The water only reflects it." The monk fell silent. To see the moon, the master said, "Don't scoop the water. Just let it be still." He rose slowly and walked back toward the temple, his form fading into the mist. The monk sat quietly. The words struck his heart like a light tap of a hammer on stone. He stopped splashing, stopped scooping. He simply sat. After a while, the surface settled, the ripples smoothed away, the water cleared, and the moon's reflection reappeared full intact, radiant, as if it had never been shattered. This time he no longer rushed to scoop it up. He just looked. Tears fell not from sadness, but because he finally understood what he had been missing. Truth is never found by grasping. It appears when you stop, when the mind grows still, and reality reveals itself. The moon was never lost, only the water was stirred. Peace was never lost, only the mind was too agitated. He sat by the lake for a long time. For the first time, he didn't torment himself with, "Am I practicing correctly? Am I fast enough? Will I achieve awakening?" For the first time, he simply breathed and felt that everything was enough. Birds sang from the forest. A light breeze rustled the lotus leaves. All was gentle. And in that stillness, he knew he had learned his greatest lesson from a moon on the water. Have you ever noticed that much of life is spent stirring the surface of your own inner lake? We think we're seeking peace, striving for happiness, when in fact, we're just frantically scooping water, trying to catch a moon that was never there. The young monk by the moonlit lake is no different from us in modern life. The more we try to seize peace, the more it dissolves. Peace isn't an object you can keep in your hands, nor a finish line to check off a to-do list. Peace is a state. It's like the moon on the water. You can't grasp it, can't scoop it up. You can only see it when the water is still enough. Yet many people hold the backward belief that if they worry enough, plan thoroughly enough, control tightly enough, they'll finally touch serenity. They believe the more they prepare for the future, the safer they'll be. The more they worry in advance, the fewer mistakes they'll make. But that's exactly why they lie awake night after night on a quiet bed, hosting a never-ending chaotic meeting inside their head. Have you ever been like that? Eyes closed, but your mind is a crowded room, everyone arguing at once. What will happen tomorrow? What if I fail? What will people think of me? You assume that more thinking, more analysis, more worrying will solve the problem. But in truth, the more you think and worry, the farther you drift from clarity. Like the monk trying to scoop the moon, the more he churned, the murkier the water became. The more you worry, the heavier your mind, the shorter your breath, the faster your heart, until everything around you looks warped and jumbled. This isn't just philosophy. Modern science bears it out. Neuroscience shows that when we're trapped in prolonged anxiety, the prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for rational thought and decision-making, gets hampered by a constant stream of stress signals from the sympathetic nervous system. In that state, we lose the ability to see clearly. Anxiety seems like it prevents danger, but in reality, it robs us of the very capacity we need to face it. Truth doesn't come from grasping or force. It doesn't need us to strain or overanalyze. Truth, like the moon, is always there. The question isn't whether it exists, but whether we're still enough to see it. When the water is clear, the moon appears. When the mind is quiet, wisdom arises. So why do we keep being swept into cycles of anxiety and control? Because we confuse letting go with giving up. We fear that if we don't control things, everything will fall apart. If we don't worry, disaster will strike. But letting go isn't apathy or neglect. Letting go simply means stopping the attempt to control what was never in our hands. You cannot control other people's thoughts. You cannot dictate tomorrow's market. You cannot grasp fate like an object in your palm. But you can choose to slow your breath. You can stop the hand that's stirring the water. You can sit still and watch the moon return. Modern life turns many into victims of perfectionism. They believe only after every task is finished, every goal achieved, every mistake eliminated, will they earn peace. But that means peace is postponed forever. There is never a day when life is entirely quiet, never a moment when everything goes exactly our way. If we wait until it's all done to be at peace, we will never be at peace. Peace appears the moment we allow it right now. How many times have you felt this same work, same environment, same relationship, yet one day everything feels cramped, pressured, irritating, and the next day it feels lighter and easier? The scene didn't change. The people didn't change. The work didn't change. Only your mind did. When the mind is turbulent, the world becomes a storm. When the mind is calm, the world blossoms. That is the power of the inner view. Some think they must flee the city for the mountains to find calm. But a few months later, they're just as uneasy. Because the unquiet place isn't the city, it's their mind. Changing places, jobs, environments, none of it matters if the mind remains chaotic. Even in paradise, the noise in your head can drown out everything beautiful. Peace isn't at the end of an escape. Peace lies in the ability to stop. Think back to the last time you truly felt at ease. Maybe it was sitting under a tree, listening to the wind. Maybe it was an ordinary afternoon when you paused to watch the sunset. Maybe it was when you forgot the clock and your plans and simply exhaled in relief. Did any of those moments require careful calculation? They arrived when you stopped calculating. They are born not from adding, but from subtracting. So it is with wisdom. People often think wisdom is knowing a lot, learning a lot, speaking well. True wisdom isn't in that noise. It lies in the capacity for stillness. Only a still lake can reflect the entire sky. When the mind is agitated, we see only the waves we make, nothing more. The truly wise speak little. They don't argue to win. They don't rush to refute. They observe, smile, and sometimes say a single sentence light as a breeze enough to wake up an entire room. So if today your mind is muddy with worry, remember the image of the monk trying to scoop the moon. He didn't find the moon by stirring harder, but by stopping. Peace doesn't come from adding effort, but from releasing. No straining, no forcing. Just breathe slowly. Loosen the grip you've held for too long and sit still. Then you'll see something clearly. The moon's reflection was never gone. It has always been there waiting for you to look. Peace has never left. It has always been there waiting for you to listen. And truth has never been hidden. It has always been there waiting for you to stop chasing and let it appear on its own. Have you ever been exhausted from trying to control everything? You worry about work, worry about family, worry about the future, to the point that even after you lie down, your mind keeps running. Have you ever felt that if you don't strain to hold everything together, it will all collapse? If you've ever felt that way, today's story is for you, because it reminds us of something simple that most adults have forgotten. Life doesn't need you to control it to keep running. High in a mountain range cloaked in clouds and white snow, a small Zen monastery nestled among ancient pines. The temple was humble, rough wooden walls, roof tiles darkened by years of wind and frost, a small weathered wooden gate just wide enough for one person to pass through. It was quiet there year-round, with little sound other than wind sighing through the trees or wind chimes tinkling when a strong gust swept in. That winter was harsher than any in memory. Northern winds poured down so cold, each breath turned to white vapor the moment it left your lips. Snow lay thick from the summit downward, swallowing the paths and turning the winding stone steps up to the monastery into a crisp white ribbon that crunched underfoot. Even the pines bent under the weight of the snow. Branches snapped in the endless winter nights. In the monastery lived a young novice, not long into his training. He was enthusiastic, eager to learn, and hard-working, but his mind still carried many worries. He wasn't used to the brutal cold of the mountains and forests. Winter nights here were nothing like the lowlands. In the lowlands, winter was a chill you could shake off with an extra coat. Here, winter was 1,000 needles piercing skin, as if drawing the warmth from your very blood. That night, wind howled through the cracks of the door, shrieking like the wild voice of the forest. The little meditation room was just big enough for a low wooden table, a thin mat, and a small brazier in the corner. That brazier was the only source of warmth through the long night. The novice sat huddled by the brazier, his robe wrapped tight, but the fire had dwindled. Half-burned logs were down to embers glowing faintly beneath a layer of gray ash. Each time the wind slipped through the doorframe, that red glow dimmed like the last breaths of someone fading away. His eyes were wide, his heart pounded. A fear rose up stronger than the cold. If the brazier dies out, I'll freeze to death. If I can't keep the fire, tonight will be my last. The thought clung to him like claws. Panicking, he stood and rummaged in the corner for a few spare logs, but the wood was damp from snow, heavy and cold. He tried to light it. It wouldn't catch. He poked with a stick, then blew, then fanned. Ash billowed. Hot specks stung his eyes. His throat burned from smoke. Sweat beaded despite the cutting wind. His hands shook partly from the cold, partly from despair. The small flame flared for a moment, then sputtered out. The last red embers dimmed and died. Only a heap of cold gray ash remained. He dropped down heart-heavy as a stone. His whole body was freezing, his spirit too. He whispered voice tight, "That's it. I've failed. I can't keep the fire. Morning may never come." In that moment, he felt himself give out. Life and death suddenly felt very close. Every effort seemed pointless. The fragile hope in his chest was like the fire in the brazier. Small flickering, then gone. Exhausted, he curled up beside the cold brazier and drifted into sleep in despair. But then something wondrous happened. As night thinned, the first ray of dawn slipped through the crack in the door. It was like a stream of golden honey, warm and gentle, touching his face. A spreading warmth moved through his body, and his eyes opened. Before him, the scene had changed. Outside, snow had begun to melt, dripping from the roof tiles onto the mossy steps. Droplets sparkled in the morning sun like clear gems. The whole courtyard glowed a pure golden light. He sprang up, looked around, and froze. No brazier needed, no straining to hold on, no doing anything at all. Still warm, because the sun had risen. Sunlight stretched across the steps, slipped between leaves, and filled the temple courtyard. Whether he tended the brazier or not, whether he strained or not, the sun still rose, bringing warmth to the world. He sat quietly, and a feeling hard to name rose in his chest. Tears fell not from despair, but from understanding something deep. There are things in life that don't need to be clenched, gripped, or despaired over when they seem to leave for a while. Because like the sun, they are still there, returning in their time, bringing warmth back again. In that moment, he understood that ease doesn't come from clinging to a tiny flame in his hands, but from trusting that dawn will come. The brazier's fire may die, but the sun never does. From that day, the novice was no longer terrified when the brazier's flame waned. He still lit it and kept warm, but he stopped clinging to it as everything. He knew no matter how long the night, the light would return. And when light comes, even the deepest cold thaws. Do you see the novice spent himself trying to keep a single coal alive while a great sun was waiting to warm the entire world? That image isn't just an old tale, it mirrors how so many live today. We too get lost tending our own braziers, forgetting the sun rises every morning. Some worries are truly useless. People often take worry as a sign of love, worrying for children. Parents work the future as if they let go even a little, everything would fall apart. But the truth is, much keeps moving without your tight grip. You don't have to tell a tree to grow. It grows. You don't have to remind the dawn to arrive. It arrives. You don't have to stand guard for the sunrise. It has come on time for billions of years. Yet we live as if everything depends on us. We scoop up every task, load our shoulders with every responsibility. We fear that if we don't think, calculate, do, and run, the world will stop turning. Our minds become machines with no off switch. The body may lie down, but the mind keeps sprinting. No pause, no rest. Look closely. Life goes on whether you rest or not. Have you ever allowed yourself to rest? When you return after a few days, what do you see? The sun still rises, rivers still flow, birds still sing, people still breathe. Work continues. The world keeps turning. This obvious truth shows that the world has never needed your control to function. It runs on laws far bigger than one person's small anxieties. Just like the novice and his winter brazier, even if he strained to keep the fire, the sun would still rise on schedule. Winter must eventually pass. Spring returns regardless of his fear. The paradox is that when we let go, we finally see life's current quietly moving. Like floating on water, the current will hold you up as long as you don't thrash. The more you struggle, the more you sink. The more you relax, the more you're supported. Learning to trust the natural flow isn't neglect, it's stopping the fight against what already works on its own. Many live like that. Winter brazier, always afraid the flame will die. They keep adding wood, more effort, more worry, too drained to stop. They think if I pause, everything will collapse. Yet when they're forced to rest by illness, burnout, or crisis, they're surprised to find life goes on just fine without their constant strain. Like the novice that morning waking in warm sunlight, though the brazier had long gone cold. Maybe you're in that place now, sitting by the brazier of work, anxious over every deadline, every number, every plan. Sitting by the brazier of responsibility, afraid that if you loosen your grip, your family, children, or parents will lack you. Sitting by the brazier of endless obligations, believing that if you don't maintain them, the world will grow cold. But in truth, the sun rises whether you stoke the fire or not. Life has never depended entirely on one person's effort. You don't need to control everything to be at peace. Peace doesn't come from clutching. It comes from the ability to pause now and then. Try a day without striving, a morning without rushing, a breath without anxiety attached. That alone can make you feel lighter, clearer, and show you that even when you rest, the world is okay. The evidence is close at hand. A mother worries over every tiny detail of raising her child, afraid of lack, mistakes, not being good enough. But when she falls ill and must rest, the child still studies and grows. A business owner loses sleep night after night, fearing that without him, things will unravel. But when he must step away due to crisis, his staff still find ways to manage. Work keeps moving. Like nature, without anyone's orders, trees still bloom, water still runs, the sky still brightens. What we need to learn isn't more control, but more trust. Trust that life already has a rhythm and order, a way it has run for thousands of years before we were born, and will continue after we are gone. So if you're worn out, anxious, carrying too much, and afraid to let go, remember the novice by the cold brazier. He thought he would freeze, but morning still came, and the sun was still warm. Life has never needed a controller to keep running. It moves forward even when you pause. Allowing yourself to rest isn't weakness, it's courage. The courage to trust life's laws, the courage to set down some of the load, the courage to believe that things can be okay without you doing everything. Because the world is still okay even when you take a break to be yourself. Have you ever gone through a major upheaval so big it felt like everything in your life was collapsing? You lost a loved one, a relationship, a job, a dream, and in that moment you felt like you yourself were falling apart too. If you've ever felt that way, today's story is for you. Because it reminds us the ones who stand after the storm aren't the strongest, but the lightest. Long ago, in a distant coastal region, there was a small village tucked against the vast ocean. The sea there was both friend and trial to the people. Each morning the sun rose from a blazing horizon, waves whispered along the shore, bringing fish and shrimp and the salty winds that blew day and night. Yet that same ocean also held unfathomable fury. When storms came, it was no longer gentle, but became a giant beast, roaring, smashing, swallowing everything. The villagers were used to living with tempests. From birth, they heard wind howling over rooftops, rain lashing the walls, waves bellowing as if to rip apart the rocky shore. They knew that to survive in such a place, their homes had to be as sturdy as fortresses. So, over generations, they built solid houses, thick stone walls, massive wooden posts, hard-fired roof tiles, iron-bolted doors. Each house was like a little stronghold ready to stand against the storms. In the middle of the village, though, stood a very different house. It was old and long abandoned. Its walls were blotched plaster, flaking green moss covering every crack. Sections of the tile roof had caved in, exposing empty patches of sky. The windows were shattered, leaving only rotten wooden frames that creaked whenever the wind blew. Inside, there was nothing but a few leaning beams and piles of dust draped in cobwebs. People passing by would shake their heads, half pitying, half disdainful. If a storm hits that house, we'll be the first to go. There's nothing in it to hold firm. Children whispered and called it the haunted house, cold, empty, and avoided. Adults regarded it as a scar on a village otherwise orderly and solid. Then one year, a great storm arrived. It had been forecast for days, but no one imagined its strength. The sky rolled with inky clouds so dense they smothered the light. The sea rose no longer the familiar gentle waves, but towering walls of water crashing again and again into the rocks, exploding into white foam. The wind screamed like thousands of arrows, like 10,000 maddened beasts tearing down anything in its path. That night, the village felt locked in a battle for life. People barred their doors, locked the bolts, tight stacked sandbags at the porch, and braced the heavy wooden panels with their own bodies. They huddled as the roofs shrieked, glass shattered, ancient trees uprooted. At times, the ground itself seemed to lift as if the whole village were being pried loose. Many trembled and prayed, hoping only that their roofs would hold till morning. At last, dawn edged back in the wind, easing the waves receding. The sky turned bright and blue again, so clear, it was hard to believe it had been black as an abyss only hours before. Villagers cracked their doors and stepped outside, fearful yet relieved. Then they froze in shock. The scene looked like a painting of ruin. Many houses built so solidly were now piles of rubble. Thick wooden doors had been ripped from their hinges, splintered across the ground. Heavy roof tiles had been flung about like dry leaves. Valuables were washed away, leaving damp stains clinging to the walls. People stared at the wreckage of a lifetime's work, eyes, stinging, hearts heavy. And yet, amid the destruction, something strange appeared. The abandoned house was still standing, still old, still moss-covered, but its walls were upright. The roof still clung to its frame. The window frames were intact, no chips, no breaks, no damage at all. The very house everyone thought was weakest had somehow stood firm through the raging storm. The villagers stared, unable to believe it. Someone blurted out, "Why? How could a decaying house stand, while so many sturdy ones fell?" The question spread. They argued possibilities. Maybe the spot was sheltered from the wind. Maybe the old structure had some clever balance the new houses lacked. But in the end, no one had a full explanation. Then, an old man stepped quietly from the crowd. He'd lived in the village for many years, hair white as salt eyes, cloudy but lit with deep understanding. He gazed at the abandoned house for a long time, then turned to the others and said, slow and resonant, "Do you know why it stood? Because it was empty. A storm can't blow away what has nothing for it to grab onto." At first, his words startled everyone. Then gradually silence fell. Each person felt something stir inside, vague yet profound. That house, having nothing precious inside, had nothing to lose. Because it was empty within the storm, found no point to strike. Meanwhile, the houses packed with belongings full of things to protect those very things became a burden, anchors for the storm to seize and tear down. People began to look at the abandoned house differently, no longer with scorn or pity. They realized that sometimes emptiness is strength. What isn't clenched is what endures. The tale spread through the village, then beyond its borders. Visitors came curious to see the house and learn its secret, but peering inside, they saw only a cold hollow, some rotted beams, and a dusty earthen floor. They left disappointed. There's nothing special. But for those who had lived through that storm, the house was no longer merely abandoned. It had become a symbol of resilient emptiness, of a strength that doesn't come from piling on more, but from letting go. Some began to connect the lesson to their own lives. For years, they had labored to build fortresses in their minds, walls of anxiety, pillars of ambition, doors of fear. They filled their interiors with possessions, status expectations, and the fear of loss. Those were the very things that made them tremble whenever life's storms hit. A single setback, a single loss, a single failure, and the house of their hearts collapsed. Meanwhile, there were those who owned little, whose hearts were empty and calm. When storms came, they stood still, letting wind pass and waves wash through, because a storm can't carry away what isn't being gripped. The story of the abandoned house became a reminder for the whole village. Sometimes, strength isn't in how much you store up, but in how much you can set down. After that, when sea winds rose again, people didn't only fortify stone walls and bolt iron doors. They also remembered that old lesson. They understood that if their hearts were bound by too many attachments and too many fears, they themselves became the marker for the storm to sweep away. But if they could be empty, could let go, then even in the tempest, they could stand still, like the abandoned house once did. Have you noticed that what weighs heaviest inside is exactly what makes us crumble fastest when hardship hits? The story of the abandoned house by the sea still speaks today. An empty house, seemingly fragile, stood firm after a violent storm. Many sturdy houses crammed with prized things lay in ruins. That paradox mirrors human life. It isn't the strongest, richest, or most fortified who endure the storm. It's the lightest. Only a light heart stands firm in upheaval. When the winds rise, the pain doesn't come from the event itself. A crisis is just an event. What shatters us is what we cling to. Cling to reputation, and a single criticism cuts like a blade. Cling to money, and one job loss can induce panic. Cling to a person, and their leaving feels like you yourself are breaking. The issue isn't that the storm is too big, it's that we've stacked too much inside for it to latch onto. The abandoned house stood because it was empty. There was nothing for the wind to grip, nothing for the waves to wreck, so the storm passed it by. Likewise, some people look strong with rank wealth and fame, yet one small incident knocks them down. Not because they're weak, but because they carry too much. An overloaded boat needs only one wave to capsize. A light boat carrying little skims naturally over the swells. Think of bamboo hollow inside. It isn't rigid like stone, but that hollowness lets it bend with the wind bowing in a storm and springing back when it's over. So it is with the heart, when it's light, when it knows how to let go. Nothing can break it. Often, what we clutch the tightest becomes the source of our deepest suffering. If you hold on to an image of yourself as flawless, every mistake becomes a fresh self-punishment. If you insist others will love you forever and never change, every change becomes a shattering. If you demand life follow your plan, every turn becomes despair. But life never promised to match our wishes. It runs by its own laws, and no one can force them. Only by loosening our grip do we hurt less when the river shifts. Here's a simple truth you can't break an open hand. Only a clenched fist feels pain when pried apart. Open your hand, be empty, and there is nothing to break. Emptiness in the spiritual sense isn't loss, it's strength. Many fear emptiness, an empty room, an empty heart, empty hands days with nothing to latch on to. But emptiness doesn't mean having nothing. It means being ready, like a vessel that can receive water only when it's empty. The heart is the same. Only when it's empty can it receive life. History has seen people who lost everything and still rose strong. One man lost his job, his house, and the wife he thought would be there forever. He felt finished. But in those bare nights, he said, "When there's nothing left, I'm no longer afraid of losing." In that absolute emptiness, he began to live again. Not by reclaiming the old, but because there was nothing left for the storm to grip. He became light, and what is light cannot be broken. In modern life, anxiety makes us heavier. We fear missing out, not having enough, falling behind, losing what we have. We load ourselves so much, we forget that worry doesn't control the future. It only steals the ability to live peacefully in the present. Each thought is another weight added to the boat until the mind is overloaded. When winds rise, such a boat sinks easily. Research also shows that people who think more positively and cling less to outcomes often recover faster from major setbacks. Their strength doesn't come from controlling everything, but from not being crushed by what lies beyond their control. Emptiness doesn't fight a storm by straining. Stone, however hard, wears down. Soft water flows on without end. Hardness can be weakness. Softness and spaciousness are true strength. That isn't resignation, it's wisdom knowing what cannot be held and letting it go. Right now, someone may be sitting in the middle of their own storm job, gone loved, one gone direction, gone. It feels like life is collapsing. Look closely. What hurts isn't you at your core, but what you're clutching. Loosen your grip and life gets lighter. Loosen your grip and the storm passes through. The abandoned house stood because it was empty. There is nothing for the wind to carry off, nothing for the waves to smash. When everything around it lay in ruins, it remained. So if you're weary in the gale, remember only a light heart stands firm in upheaval. Less clinging means less wounding. Emptiness isn't weakness, it's strength. You don't have to fight the storm by hardening like stone. Be light like an empty house. The storm will pass, and in the end, you'll still be whole. In that spacious emptiness, we finally find true peace. Have you ever grown tired from constantly fighting everything? You try to beat your circumstances, beat other people, even beat yourself. But the harder you try to win, the more exhausted you become, as if you're banging your head against a cold stone wall. If you've ever felt that way, today's story is for you, because it reminds us of something the modern world often forgets. Going through isn't always better than going around. Long ago, on a high mountainside veiled in clouds year-round, there was an ancient pine forest. Trunks stood towering, roots sank deep into the earth, and the green canopies rustled like celestial music whenever the wind passed through. In that forest, a small stream sprang from melting snow at the summit. Whenever sunlight touched it, the white snow glittered like silver, melting into the very first drops, gathering into a flow, then running along the slope. The stream was small, but so clear you could see every pebble on the bottom. The water babbled, reflecting light that shimmered like ribbons of silver draped across the forest. Along its journey, the stream slipped past gnarled roots, hugged stones coated in moss, and edged through narrow earthen gaps. Its sound never fell silent. By day, it rang like music blending with wind and bird song. By night, it whispered as if telling old stories to the ancient pines. Everything seemed peaceful until one day the stream met the first great trial of its life, a massive boulder blocking its course. The rock was so huge it blotted out the sun. Its dark color clashed sharply with the stream's transparent water. It lay there imposing and unyielding like a proud fortress wall, challenging all. No large cracks, no hint of softness. It sat motionless, like a haughty king sprawled across the path. The stream's first drops rushed forward with all their zeal and eagerness. They believed they could pierce anything. But when they struck the rock, they shattered into white foam. The sound of water hitting stone rang harsh and mournful like a cry thrown back. Day after day, waves of water persisted. They carried the belief that if they were strong enough, relentless enough, they could bore through that wall. But the rock stayed hard, stubborn, unmoving. The water kept charging, breaking, flung back, then gathering itself to surge again. Time passed and the layers of water grew weary. Some drops whispered to one another, "Maybe we were born to flow, but this is the end. We can't get past." Others cried out in desperation, "No, we must continue. If we can't break through, everything ends here." And so day after day, the little stream turned into a pointless battle. Each time it hurled itself at the rock, it only burst into spray, changing nothing. Then one day, the stream stopped. It was quiet for a long moment, as if thinking. The pines fell suddenly still. The birds ceased singing as though the whole forest waited to see what it would do next. And then instead of crashing into the rock one more time, the stream gently curved. It stopped ramming head-on. It changed direction. At first, that change was only a few drops slipping into a small crevice along the rock side. They felt their way, searching slow and cautious. Gradually, day after day, the water found its own route. It arced around one side, wrapped the rock's body, edged into tiny cracks, barely visible to the eye, and continued to slide down. The strange thing was that once the stream changed course, it no longer heard itself screaming. The babbling returned clear and free, as if it had never been stopped. The boulder still lay there motionless and steadfast as ever, but the stream had moved on, light as air. People passing by would often stop and gaze at the scene. They were surprised, even puzzled. How could a small stream keep going when a supposedly impenetrable wall lay before it? They bent down and saw the moon's reflection in the water, saw schools of little fish darting beneath the rock, and they realized the stream hadn't chosen destruction. It had chosen to go around. An old woodcutter, who often rested by the stream, said something many never forgot: "Stone can be proud of its strength, but that strength only makes it stand still." The stream is soft And precisely because it is soft, it keeps going. The rock will lie there for 1,000 years, but the stream will reach the sea. From then on, the stream became a symbol. Children from the village would come to play, listen to its sound, and learn that you don't always have to ram straight through to win. Sometimes quietly bending, changing course is exactly how you go farther. And that stream, year after year, kept flowing, kept singing. It didn't bother with whether the rock gave way. It had found its path, circling around gentle free. The boulder remained, still huge, still immobile, still casting its shadow. But it was no longer a problem. It was just part of the landscape, a low note in the mountain's song. As for the stream, it had gone far down to the valley, then to the river, then to the sea, wide and boundless. People would retell this story on bright moonlit nights. They'd sit around the fire and remind each other, "Don't be hard like stone, or you'll get stuck. Be soft like the stream, and you'll go far." It's easy to see that the stream's lesson isn't only in the beautiful scene of nature, but also in a simple truth. We often overlook the stream doesn't need to beat the rock, nor prove it's stronger. It only needs not to contend with the rock. Because of that, it goes farther than any rock that ever blocked it. From there, a truth emerges. Flexibility is the sustainable path. In life, people are often taught to be steadfast, tough, and never back down. These lessons follow us from childhood into adulthood. Be strong in the face of hardship. Stand tall in the storm. Win at all costs. But few remind us that such hardness taken to extremes can break us before we ever reach what we want. Like a dry branch that snaps in a strong wind while a hollow, supple bamboo bends with the gusts bowing during the storm and standing straight again when the sky clears. Flexibility isn't weakness. Flexibility is the wisdom of life. It's the ability to know when to stop, when to let go, when to go around, instead of smashing through. It isn't surrender, it's the art of survival. The wise don't spend all their strength on head-on clashes. They find the path with the least damage so they can go farther. In reality, many breakdowns don't happen because people are incompetent or lack talent, but because they're too rigid. They cling to a plan, even when circumstances have changed, hold onto a role, even when their heart is no longer in it. Keep propping up a relationship that's already exhausted. They think stopping is failure. Changing course is surrender. The truth is the opposite. Sometimes the bravest thing is to turn back. Don't resist, redirect. Nature is always the great teacher of flexibility. Water doesn't fight stone yet. Water outlasts stone. Wind doesn't shatter mountains, yet the wind remains, while the mountains slowly wear down. Trees don't survive storms by brute force, but by the suppleness within their trunks. The most enduring things in nature are exactly those that can soften, bend, and go around. Because of that, they outlive anything rigid. The stream never had to scream, "I must break this rock to continue." It only whispered, "I'll take another way," not resisting or redirecting, and in the end, it went far, continuing toward the open sea while the great stone stayed stuck in place. People need that lesson too. Faced with adversity, many believe that only by winning, pushing through at any cost, can they call it success. But true success is often in knowing when to release, when to choose a different path, once the old one is blocked. Softness overcomes obstacles. There's an interesting point. Every living thing that survives storms shares one trait: they're soft. A soft blade of grass can withstand a strong wind while a brittle branch snaps. A fish that bends with the current lives while a giant log drifting along is battered to pieces. What seems like weakness flexibility is what ensures survival. So it is in life. Those who carry too much rigidity break easily when trouble comes. Those who are soft survive not because they're weak, but because they don't let their ego become a wall between them and the way through. They bow when needed, release when required, and because of that, they remain. There are clear, real-world examples. A woman once lost all her capital in an economic crisis. Many peers chose lawsuits and fights to claw back what they'd lost. She chose to start over in a completely different field. At first, everyone said she was weak, that she gave up too soon. 10 years later, looking back, she was the only one still standing. Because she didn't bash her head against the boulder, she bent like the stream. And this can be true for anyone. Each of us has our own boulders, a problem that won't budge no matter how hard we try, a person who won't change. Despite all our pleading, a situation that won't improve even after we've poured out our hearts. Standing before such a rock, we often think, if I don't beat it, I'll never get through. The truth is, you don't have to beat it. You only have to go around it. Not everyone who breaks rock reaches the sea. Those who do are the ones patient and supple enough to curve around it, still flowing, still singing, still moving. The long way around is sometimes the shortest way to go far, because strength isn't about who is harder, it's about who lasts longer, who can keep their current running. If you're tired, don't scold yourself for wanting to rest. If you're hesitating, don't assume softness is weakness. Soft doesn't mean losing. Soft means living. Rock may be huge, but in the end it wears away. Water may be little, but because it keeps moving, it reaches the sea. Remember, flexibility is the sustainable way. Don't resist, redirect. Softness overcomes obstacles. The path that's too rigid will break. The path that's soft enough will endure. You don't have to win everything, you only have to keep flowing, like the stream curving around the boulder, still moving, still singing, still going to the great sea. No matter what stands in the way. Have you ever hesitated at an important turning point? You want to change, to turn onto a new path, to begin something new, but your heart keeps wavering. What if I fail? What if it goes nowhere? What if I lose everything? You stand at the threshold like a dandelion seed head, trembling in the wind, wanting to fly, but afraid of not knowing where you'll land. If you've ever felt that way, today's story is for you, because it reminds us of a simple yet profound truth. Live fully, then let go. Don't demand to know the destination before you dare to step. Under the blazing gold of summer sunlight, the fields stretched out endlessly like a shimmering carpet. There young rice whispered with the wind, and wild grasses swayed like tiny nomads of the countryside. In the midst of it all stood an old dandelion, solitary, its thin stalk like an old sketch, yet still wearing a white crown, a round bloom soft and delicate, as if woven from light. Each tiny floret, small yet proud, stood like a miniature sun, waiting for the last moment of its life. That summer, the first seasonal breeze returned. It wasn't a violent wind tearing trees up by the roots, nor a storm ripping the sky apart. It was gentle like a mother's hand, soothing, slipping through tufts of grass, kissing the clear surface of a narrow canal, then touching the dandelion. In that instant, the white globe trembled softly. Each floret quivered as if hearing a distant call it knew it had to answer. Then the miracle happened. One tiny floret detached from its stem. The parting was so gentle there wasn't a sound. It lifted lightly, floating in the air, spinning in the sunlight. Then a second, a third. The whole globe, once held together atop the stalk, became hundreds of tiny seeds flung into the wind. It looked like a dance. Against the deep blue sky, pure white dandelion seeds fanned out in all directions, glowing in the golden light like a swarm of fireflies at midday. Passers-by stopped, gazed upward. Children ran after them, reaching to catch them, laughing bright and clear. Elders smiled, squinting as if glimpsing in that moment a deep lesson about life. But the dandelion seeds paid no mind to human eyes. They simply flew. They flew without a destination, without a map, without any promise that the road ahead would be safe. All they had were wings as thin as silk and a quiet trust in the wind lifting them. Some seeds were lucky and carried far. They crossed wide fields, drifted over dusty dirt roads, floated above thatched roofs. At last, they came down in a new land, fertile and filled with light. There they took root, grew, and one day became new dandelions, continuing life's unending circle. Other seeds fell by the edge of a pond. The water was cool, the soil soft, and sunlight still reached them. They sprouted at the water's rim, modest but lush, tiny bright points in a quiet village scene. But some fell into cold, dry crevices of rock. There they could not take root, could not grow, could become nothing more than a forgotten seed. They disappeared quietly without a trace. Whatever the outcome, not a single dandelion seed hesitated when the wind came. None clung in fear to the stem. None refused the journey for fear of failure. They simply let go. Perhaps they understood that the meaning of their lives wasn't in holding on, but in release. Not in clinging to the mother plant, but in entrusting themselves to the wind to sow life elsewhere. Not all would sprout, not all would grow into plants, but every flight was part of the endless turning of life. The old dandelion, watching its florets fly away, wasn't sad. It didn't wail or cling. It simply stood, letting the wind take what it needed to take, because it knew its emptiness now was not a loss, but a completion. It had given everything, and in the giving life would continue. That summer noon, field became an enchanted scene. Against a clear sky, countless white dandelion seeds tilted and spun, glittering like a daytime meteor shower. The wind kept blowing, the sun stayed golden, and life went on quietly in ways humans can never control. And the question still echoed in people's hearts: what made those tiny dandelion seeds so brave? Perhaps it was acceptance, knowing life promises nothing certain yet. Only by daring to leave, by daring to let go, can you find the land that truly belongs to you. In the stillness of a summer noon, the lesson from those seeds remains weighty. There are moments in life when we cannot know the result in advance. But what we can do is let ourselves be carried by life's wind step, forward bravely, without needing certainty or guarantees, just daring to fly. And in that very act of flinging ourselves outward, life sprouts again, green, fresh, unending. There's a truth we've all felt, but rarely admit. Humans crave certainty. We want to know the outcome before we begin. We want to see a safe road before we step onto it. We want every fallback plan in place before we move forward. But life has never worked that way. No one has ever seen their whole journey. No one knows for sure what tomorrow brings. And while we wait for absolute guarantees, we lose countless chances, countless gusts that could have carried us to new horizons. Look at the dandelion seed on that summer noon. It doesn't know where it will land. It has no map, no promise of safety, no backup plan. When the wind arrives, it simply shivers and lets go. No hesitation, no clinging, no fear. And because of that, it goes farther than any calculation. Some seeds fly dozens of miles to golden fields. Some sprout by a pond and grow into new plants. Some vanish between rocks, never to take shape. But all of them lived fully in the moment they launched into the wind. Modern people often do the opposite. We wait until we're good enough to try. We wait for everything to be stable before we change. We wait until we can see the finish line before we run. But the more we wait, the more time slips by. And when we turn around, youth has rushed past like a season of wind, leaving only an old dandelion that never left the stem. What we've lost isn't just opportunity, it's the moments of living true to ourselves. Living fully isn't recklessness. It simply means, once you do it, pour your whole heart in. And once you've poured your heart in, know when to let go. Like the dandelion through spring and summer, it lives fully in every golden petal, giving itself to sun and sky. Then, when the time comes, it doesn't hold back a single floret. It gives everything to the wind, entrusting the outcome, so life can go on. In life, perhaps the saddest thing isn't failure, it's never beginning. Many carry burning dreams they never dare to pursue. They stand there year after year, preparing, calculating, waiting until everything is ready. But there is no such time. In the end, what they hold isn't success or failure, but a regret that never fades. There's a simple truth. Grown-ups often forget no one ever knows exactly where they'll end up. You can draw a detailed route, predict every turn, prepare each step, and life will still veer another way. That isn't failure, that is life. And like the dandelion, you don't need to know the whole road, you just need to dare to let go. A young woman once quit a steady job to pursue painting. When she decided, family and friends objected. Some called her crazy. Others sneered that she was destroying her future. She didn't know what she would paint, who would buy her work, or how she would live. But she knew this if she didn't try, she'd live forever in regret. 10 years later, she became a recognized artist. Her greatest joy wasn't fame or money, it was waking up each morning to do what she loves. All because that day she dared to fling herself outward like a dandelion seed in the wind. The secret lies in trust. The dandelion seed has nothing but the wind, yet it flies the world over. Humans have more intelligence, grit, love, experience. The one thing often missing is trust that we can learn along the way. Trust that the universe will send the right people at the right time. Trust that even without knowing where we'll land, we'll still find our place. That trust isn't blind. It's accepting that no one controls every outcome, and the courage to release the stem and surrender to life's current. Trust is the wings of the journey. In psychology, there's a concept called fear of failure. It's one of the biggest barriers keeping people from ever starting. It makes us believe that if success isn't guaranteed, it's better to do nothing. But in reality, not starting is the only guaranteed failure. Those who step forward, even if they stumble, go farther than those who stand still. Consider this: if a dandelion seed refused to leave the stem, would it live longer? Maybe, but it would wither right there, disappearing without ever taking a single flight. By contrast, a seed that flies, even if it falls into rock and never sprouts, at least once touched the sky. And that makes all the difference. Life doesn't need you to know the outcome. Life only asks that you dare to try. Maybe you're standing at a threshold now, a career decision, a new relationship, a long-held dream, and you're afraid. What if it goes nowhere? Remember, not going is the only sure way to go nowhere. If you dare to go, you might stumble, but you might also find your own sky. Let the image of the dandelion seed be your reminder. Don't wait for the wind to stop before you let go. Don't wait for certainty before you live. Launch when the wind touches you. Live fully in this moment, then release. You don't need to know the destination in advance. What matters isn't where you'll land, but that you dared to fly. And when you dare to fly, you'll discover something wondrous. The sky is wider than you imagined, the wind more generous than you thought. And your heart, once it knows how to let go, is lighter than any pair of wings. When was the last time you laughed out loud, a full, wholehearted laugh for no reason at all? Not because of success, not because you achieved something, not because someone praised you, but simply because you're alive. You're breathing and your heart is beating. If it's been a long time since you laughed like that, today's story is for you, because it reminds us of something important. True joy doesn't need conditions. At the foot of a great mountain stood a small hermitage made of bamboo and wood, roofed with dried leaves, simple and quiet. People in the area called it the old monk's hut, because for decades a monk had lived there, silent as a shadow among the high peaks. He had practiced since he was very young. Time passed. His hair went from black to white, his eyes from clear to deep. People said those eyes seemed to hold mountains and forests, clouds and long rivers. He had read countless sutras, memorized every line, and taught many who came seeking guidance. His voice was low, slow, and clear, with the power to make listeners feel a cool stream flowing into their hearts. Yet deep in the place, no one could see. The monk always felt a hollow. He understood the Buddha's teachings: impermanence, non-self, compassion, wisdom. But the light, simple happiness the enlightened ones described, the kind of joy without conditions, he had never truly tasted. Many nights after chanting, he would sit for hours before a small oil lamp and ask himself, "Have I taken a wrong turn? Or is there still an attachment so small the naked eye can't see it?" That question was like a tiny thorn in a finger, not great pain, but a constant ache that kept him from ever being fully at ease. One summer afternoon, the sky was so clear, not a wisp of cloud remained. A cool breeze drifted down the slope, gentle as a hand stroking his silver hair. The monk left the hut and walked down the mountain along a winding dirt path to a small village at the base. It was a simple countryside village, mossy tile roofs, old bamboo fences, rice fields ripening gold in the distance. Children ran and played. A rooster crowed in someone's yard. The smell of new straw floated on the wind. He walked slowly, hearing the grit crunch beneath his straw sandals and feeling the golden sun lay long across his brown robe. Then suddenly, a sound rose in that peaceful air. Laughter, clear as a bell, innocent as running water, lively as a flock of young birds calling at dawn. He stopped. The sound came from a small courtyard beside the road. The monk tilted his head and looked in. Inside, in the slanting gold light, was a child about 3 years old, small body, little hands dusty with dirt, a round, rosy face. No expensive toys, no one paying attention, no praise. Just the child and a clod of earth. The child lifted the clod and squeezed. It crumbled. Dust fell like sand. He burst into peals of laughter, eyes squinting, mouth wide, showing tiny milk teeth white as pearls. A breeze swirled a dry leaf into the air. The child clapped and laughed till he doubled over as if witnessing a miracle. Then a cat suddenly leapt over the bamboo fence. The child laughed loud and bright like festive fireworks. He laughed and laughed as if he couldn't stop, not for a reward, not for a goal, not for any reason at all. He simply laughed. The old monk stood there quietly watching, his eyes long accustomed to sutra pages. Ancient pines and drifting clouds were now fixed on that small face. In the child's laughter, he recognized something very familiar, something he hadn't touched in a long time. He stood for a long time, long enough for the sun to tilt toward evening, the wind to fall still, and the distant temple bell to sound at dusk. Still, he did not look away. And then suddenly, a flash of insight lit his heart. He understood what he'd lacked all these years wasn't in the scriptures, nor in long meditations, nor in others' reverence. It was there in a child's laughter. Joy is not the reward at the end of practice. Joy is not something that comes only after enlightenment. Joy is something present right now when we stop looking for it. The monk let out a soft laugh. It wasn't loud or ringing like the child's, but light as a breeze, clear as morning dew. A laugh for no reason at all. Not for success, not for wisdom, not for attainment. Simply because in that moment, he didn't have to be anyone, achieve anything, or prove anything. He simply was alive. And in that very moment, he awakened. He realized that all these years he'd been seeking something that never needed seeking. He had believed he must scrub away delusions, shatter all troubles, and reach some peak before he could touch happiness. But happiness isn't a far-off destination. It's a child laughing at a clod of dirt. It's a leaf spinning in the wind. It's the moment you don't need a reason to smile. He understood at last the way isn't about becoming someone else. It's about returning to the original guileless heart we lost while growing up. That night, the monk returned to the hut. Moonlight lay over the thatch. Insects chirped. He sat down, closed his eyes, and a smile lingered on his lips. Not the smile of knowledge, but the smile of a child found within. From then on, everyone who met him sensed something different. He was still erudite and wise, but in every word and gesture, there was a lightness and clarity like a child's gaze. People asked him, "Master, how can one awaken?" He simply smiled, eyes bright as an autumn lake, and replied, "Learn to laugh for no reason. When you can do that, you've already touched the way." A child has never studied how to be happy, yet lives more happily than most adults. Watch a 3-year-old playing with a clod of dirt, laughing at a falling leaf, squealing when a cat runs by, and you'll see joy needs no reason. It doesn't need teaching promises or the right conditions. It simply arises natural as breath, as a heartbeat. Yet, as we grow up, We forget that simplicity and turn happiness into a puzzle so complex we can't solve it. Adults always attach conditions to joy. We tell ourselves, when I have a house, I'll be happy. Then, when we have a house, I need a car, a career. Once we have those, we worry. When will I find love? When will I have a family? And when we do, we're still not at ease. Because we want even more. We turn joy into a prize we chase forever, but never reach, like a donkey running after the carrot dangling before its nose, thinking it's almost there only to end up exhausted. A child is different. A child doesn't need to know what tomorrow's food or clothes will be or who they'll become. They don't need to prove their worth. They just need to be themselves in the moment that's here. That completeness makes them happy. Adults live as if every moment is only a stopover, something to rush through to get to the destination. We eat not to savor, but to keep working. We walk not to enjoy the breeze, but to reduce tomorrow's stress. We even breathe just to fuel more running. The result is we've hardly ever truly lived in any moment at all. The paradox is that our happiest moments are usually the ones when we aren't trying to be happy an afternoon, watching rain from the porch, a morning with a hot cup of tea, birdsong in the air, an evening holding someone you love in silence, just listening to each other's heartbeat. No goals, no rewards, no pressure. And yet the heart feels light, because happiness doesn't need chasing, it needs permission to appear. Modern research supports this. When people overfocus on a happiness goal, stress in the brain rises, anxiety hormones surge, and it becomes harder to enjoy the present. By contrast, when we loosen our grip, when we allow ourselves not to have to be happy, we more easily experience natural joy. It is precisely the letting go of striving that opens the door for happiness to enter. But modern society seems to teach the opposite. We're told we must succeed to deserve joy, must achieve to deserve to laugh. So many spend their lives collecting everything, yet their eyes remain empty. They have big houses, nice cars, prestigious jobs, but never feel at peace. From start to finish, they've lived only for someday and never paused to enjoy right now. Meanwhile, others own nothing special, no status, no wealth, no recognition, yet their eyes sparkle and their laughter rings like a child's. Because they know how to laugh for no reason, simply because they're alive. No one can take that joy away, because it doesn't depend on anything outside. It lives in their own permission to be glad. Maybe right now someone is tired, pushing hard after a dream they think will bring happiness. But look again. Happiness isn't at the finish. It's in each step. You don't need to wait until the work is done to exhale, or until success comes to smile. It's enough to notice that you're alive, breathing, able to see the morning light. You already have reason to be glad. Try just once, dropping all the musts, the shoulds, the packed plans. Sit down, take a sip of tea, listen to leaves rustle, feel a sunbeam, and smile for no reason, simply because you're here alive. That small smile may contain all the freedom you've been seeking. And who knows, maybe in that moment, you'll grasp what the old monk understood when he heard the child's laughter. Happiness was never waiting at the end of the road. It's right where you stand, just waiting for you to stop and see it. Have you ever wished you could erase a painful memory? An old story you don't want to remember yet. It keeps coming back like a shadow that clings to you whenever night falls. You think you've forgotten, but with just a scent, a sentence, a familiar melody. All the pain rushes back. If you've ever felt that way, today's story is for you, because it reminds us of something most adults forget. The past doesn't define you unless you keep holding on to it. Long ago, on a high mountain shrouded in clouds year-round, there was a small thatched hut resting quietly on a rocky slope. The hut was simple-roofed with dry leaves, walls of rough wood, and a winding footpath out front that led down into the valley. Few locals ever came by. The path up was treacherous, and the mountain was cloaked in mist most of the year. But everyone knew that on that peak lived a reclusive Zen master said to have a mind as clear as an autumn lake, never angered, never saddened, never blaming anyone. People said that even when storms rose and winds tore off the thatch, he would sit still before the hut hands joined, silent like an ancient pine standing firm in the gale. One day, a young man came seeking him. His face was gaunt, his eyes deep, his gaze heavy as if carrying a sky full of clouds. He had traveled a long way through forest paths, crossed streams, climbed slopes. His clothes were worn, his shoes muddy. His breath was heavy. Sweat beaded his brow, yet in his eyes there flickered a sliver of hope. He came to learn the way to find a way out for a heart chained by memories of the past. What weighed him down wasn't ignorance. He wasn't foolish or deluded. On the contrary, he had read many books and listened to many teachings. Yet inside, all was dark because his past was full of wounds, slow to heal. He had been betrayed by the person he trusted most. He had lost a loved one in a sudden tragedy. He had poured his strength into a dream and failed miserably, leaving shards in his heart that still bled. Whenever he sat to meditate, he found no quiet. Instead of stillness, his mind became an old movie theater replaying the reels of yesterday. The face of the betrayer, the cries when his loved one died the moment he collapsed in failure. Everything returned vividly, detail by detail. He tried to push them away, but the more he tried, the more they clung. He tried to forget, but the more he wanted to forget, the deeper they carved in. Night after night, memories rose like ghosts, dragging him into regret, anger, and despair. One silver moon night, while the mountain wind whispered through the pines, he knelt before the Zen master and choked out a question. "Master, how can I stop the past from haunting me?" The master looked at him for a long time. His eyes were bright and still, like a deep well without a ripple. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he stepped into the hut and brought out a large mirror in a wooden frame darkened by years. He set the mirror down in front of the young man, tilting it so the moonlight struck it and the surface shone like a clear lake. He asked, "What do you see in the mirror?" The young man hesitated, then said, "I see myself." The master nodded gently. He raised a thin hand and breathed lightly onto the mirror. A veil of mist formed on the glass, leaving it hazy and dull. The image disappeared, replaced by a blurred, ghostly patch. The master asked again, "What do you see now?" The young man frowned. "Nothing. Just mist." The master asked, "Then has your image truly vanished?" The young man thought a moment, then shook his head. "No, it's still there. It's only been obscured." The master smiled and nodded, pleased. "Exactly. A mirror doesn't keep images. It only reflects. When mist covers it, the image fades, but its nature hasn't changed. It's waiting for the mirror to be clear again. The mirror doesn't try to hold what is past or drive away what is coming. It simply reflects what is present before it. Then he used his sleeve to lightly wipe the mirror. The mist vanished, and the young man's reflection returned clear, bright, unblurred. The young man fell silent. Something stirred within him. He understood that memories cannot disappear. The past cannot be erased. It's like an image in a mirror, coming and going, appearing and fading, but the mirror itself doesn't keep it. Yet all this time, he had lived like a mirror, clinging to every image that passed, becoming clouded and unable to reflect the present. The master spoke slowly, his voice like wind through a bamboo grove. You don't need to fight to erase the past. You only need to learn not to keep it. Be like this mirror, reflect, then let go. When you no longer cling to what is gone, your mind will be clear again, like a mirror that's been wiped clean. Hearing this, tears rolled down the young man's face, not from pain, but from relief for the first time. He realized that all this time he hadn't suffered because the past existed, but because he insisted on holding it tight. He embraced the darkness and then lamented that he could no longer see the light. He clutched the old reels and then despaired that the present could never be fresh. That night he sat by the mirror for a long time. He didn't meditate or force his mind to be still. He simply sat, breathed slowly, and let the images in the mirror come and go, changing with the moonlight and the breeze. For the first time in years, he felt a gentle emptiness within. It wasn't frightening, it was warm, like moonlight blanketing the mountains and forests. And in that moment, he understood the master's words. A mirror does not keep images. The mind doesn't need to keep the past. Just let go, and the light will appear on its own. We don't truly suffer because the past exists. We suffer because we keep gripping it in our minds like a mirror smeared with fingerprints. Whenever we look at the present, we no longer see what's right before us. We only see smudges, layers of memory dust making the scene muddy. The past by itself has no power to hold us. We're the ones who hold it with longing, regret, resentment. And when the mind has become a cloudy mirror, the light of the present can hardly shine through. The past does not define a person, but most of us forget this. We retell ourselves the same story over and over, like a label we stick on our own chest. Because I failed once, I'll always be a failure. Because I was abandoned, I'm unworthy of love. Because I made mistakes, I'll always be wrong. Those stories, which are nothing more than old memories, slowly become a prison that keeps us from living fully. But what's the truth? The past is just slices of time that have passed, an old film playing in the mind. It is not who we really are. We are not the mistakes we made. We are not what others did to us. We are not the scars on body and heart. Right now, in this very moment, we are the one breathing, listening present. We are the one who can choose a new chapter for our life, no matter how dark the last one was. A thick book of hundreds of pages never has only one chapter. So why let one sad chapter define the whole story of your life? A mirror has reflected countless faces, yet no face has ever become the mirror. It quietly reflects, then lets go. If a mirror tried to keep every image it reflected, it would cease to be a mirror and become only a murky wall. Our minds are the same. When packed with too many old images and shadows, we can no longer see what's actually here. We meet someone new, but look through eyes once wounded, suspicious, and guarded. We step into a new opportunity, but carry the tremble of the last failure. We look at life and see only yesterday's cracks, not today's colors. It's like a mirror coated in dust. Even if the sun shines brilliantly, it can only reflect a gray, dull image. To see the present clearly, we don't need to erase memory, and we certainly don't need to force forgetting. We only need to stop keeping it. Let the past pass like figures moving across a mirror, arriving and leaving nothing behind. Some people live their entire lives like a mirror covered in old marks. Their eyes are always clouded, their voices heavy, their hearts suspicious of everything, not because their lives are worse than others, but because they've never once wiped the mirror within. Others have endured unspeakable pain, loss, betrayal, deep wounds, yet their eyes are clear as morning, and their smiles gentle as spring wind, not because they never suffered, but because they learned to view memory as reflection. It comes and goes. They don't keep it. And because they don't keep it, they can see the light present in every moment. Letting go of memory is not a betrayal of yourself. We often fear that if we let go of the past, we'll forget the lessons, forget those who were dear, forget the self who suffered. But letting go doesn't mean wiping it out. It means stopping the past from steering the present. When we keep holding on, we don't live fully today because our mind is tied to yesterday. Like someone walking forward while constantly looking back, how can they see the road ahead? The past doesn't need erasing. It needs to be set down. When you set it down, you'll discover the present was never lacking. Reality is already enough. We just keep our hands full of old shards and have no room to receive it. There was a woman who carried 10 years of remorse for a youthful mistake. For 10 years, she wouldn't allow herself joy, wouldn't dare love, wouldn't dare dream. She believed it was a way to atone. But in those 10 years, she missed countless beautiful moments that could have healed her. One day, she burst into tears and realized, the person I'm punishing no longer exists. The person I used to be, she's gone. The person I am now has never been allowed to live. From that day, she began again. Not because she forgot, but because she let go, so her hands were free to hold the present. Maybe right now you're living in a mirror covered with old shadows. Maybe you think you're unworthy, not good enough, unable to change. But remember, those are only leftover images. You are not the shadow. You are the mirror. And a mirror does not keep images. It reflects, then lets go. When you learn to keep your mind like a mirror, the past will drift away like clouds clearing from the sky. And that sky already blue will appear again. Letting go of memory doesn't erase the value of what you've lived through. It simply lets you move forward more lightly. Life is short. Why carry yesterday's sacks of stones on your shoulders? If a train is carrying you towards sunrise, do you want to clutch old luggage or sit lightly and enjoy the view out the window? Remember, the past doesn't define us. A mind that doesn't store images sees clearly. Let go of memory to live the present fully. You don't have to erase the past to be free. You just have to stop hauling it along, like a mirror that releases every reflection so each new day can shine a brand new light. And perhaps the moment you wipe the mirror in your heart, you'll be astonished to see a radiant person who's been waiting for you all along, yourself, the version never dimmed by the past's shadow. And then you'll understand, freedom was never far away. It's right here in this moment, when you dare to let go and live an entirely new day. Looking back on the whole journey, we see the deepest truth lies not in our victories or our losses, but in how gently we passed through them all. The Buddha taught, "A heart that is empty is unmoved by the wind. A heart that is light is not sunk by the waves." We cannot avoid change, but we can learn not to let it knock us down. Every storm eventually fades. Every pain eventually quiets. Only the mind that knows how to release remains whole in the end. When we let go of the heavy self, we don't become weaker, we become stronger. When we live like the hollow bamboo, we don't lose anything. We finally become able to receive fully what is arriving. This is the quietest strength of one who practices, not trying to control life, only keeping the mind from being controlled by life. If these Zen stories have touched you, helping your heart soften even a little, remember you are not alone on the path back to peace. I invite you to keep walking together so each day we learn to breathe more slowly, live more lightly, and love more deeply. Please subscribe to Buddhism Seeds Hit. Like if this video was helpful, share it with anyone who needs a quiet space inside, and leave a comment below about the smallest thing today that made you smile. Because who knows, your story might be the light for someone lost in the night.